Chapter 616. Greetings, Senior Lu. Ze stuck out her tongue and smiled. Obviously, it was not the first time she saw Lu Yanqing. Furong did not know any of them, but she also followed suit and bowed. Nongzhu, who is this lady? Lu Yanqing looked at Furong and asked in confusion. Nongzhu laughed and said, her name is Furong, an old friend's disciple. She came with me to see the cornucopia. Nongzhu had many friends, but not many could be considered old friends. Lu Yanqing's gaze suddenly stopped at Furong's waist. On the black jade pendant with cloud patterns, there was a frightening word "Bai" engraved on it. Nongzhu's old friend's disciple? Lu Yanqing's breathing quickened slightly. It was not the first time she saw this jade pendant, but now it was worn on this slightly shy woman. Then her master is, so it's Lady Furong. Lu Yanqing's gaze moved, and she rarely took the initiative to greet a junior. Old Axayan had seen Furong in Daong Kingdom, but they had never spoken. This girl was hanging out with Nongzhu at that time, so he did not find it strange. But seeing that his master valued her so much, he was somewhat curious. Sikongju was not blind, so he naturally saw the jade pendant. He had also seen this jade pendant before. His pupils suddenly shrank and the expression on his face twitched. He looked at Furong and swallowed his saliva with difficulty. He rarely cupped his hands and said to Furong, so it's Lady Furong. The 6 disciples were also not fools. They also felt that the atmosphere was a little strange. Sikongju actually took the initiative to bow to a junior. The gazes of the 6 people also fell on Furong with uncertainty. Who was this? Furong timidly returned the greeting to the 2. She did not know what the jade pendant on her waist meant, and did not know how much pressure it was for the people who knew this jade pendant. Nongzhu looked on from the side and was quite satisfied. She admired herself for using Yu Qianqiu to seduce Furong, and then using Furong to steal a jade pendant from Bai Changchun. It was a rare opportunity to borrow the tiger's might. She laughed and said, "Don't dawdle here. Let's go in first. Please." Sikongju waved his hand solemnly. Then, he led them into the cornucopia, and the group headed straight for the God of Wealth Peak. Not long after Yin Baikong sent Niu Yud away, Sikongju arrived with a few people. Nongzhu retracted her flying magical item, then immediately cupped her fists at Yin Baikong and said, "Yin Baikong, congratulations. You're going to be rich again. Nongzhu is here." Yin Baikong replied indifferently. He never had a good impression of Nongzhu. This guy relied on the fact that Bai Changchun was his good friend to never put him in his eyes. If it weren't for Bai Changchun, he would have killed him several times when they didn't get along. Nongzhu smiled and did not take it seriously. In his heart, he thought, "I know that you and Grandpa don't get along, so I specially got you a nemesis today." Yin Baikong smiled at Lu Yanqing, raised his hand and laughed, "Rare guest, rare guest. My cornucopia is greatly honored by Divine Physician Lu's presence, ha. Brother Yin is too humble. I hope I won't disturb you." Lu Yanqing bowed. Hee. I can't even invite an esteemed guest, how can I disturb you? I actually hope you come and disturb me every day. Yin Baikong laughed heartily, then turned to Sikongju and instructed, "Arrange a quiet courtyard halfway up the mountain. Don't let anyone disturb Divine Physician Lu." Most of the other powers had their own places to stay in Cornucopia, but Lu Yanqing's Spirit Fong Valley did not have any shops in Cornucopia, so naturally, they had no place to stay. They couldn't let one of the 4 eccentrics stay in an inn in Cornucopia, right? Yin Baikong was not that bad. Moreover, Lu Yanqing was such a delicate beauty. Although Yin Baikong was old, he had always been interested in protecting beauties. Most importantly, there were too many people in the cultivation world who owed Lu Yanqing a favor, including Yin Baikong himself who owed Spirit Fong Valley a favor. Don't look at how she stood aloof from worldly affairs, and her cultivation wasn't very high, but no one could underestimate her power. As for whether she used it or not, that was another matter. But then again, to be able to be recognized as one of the 4 eccentrics, none of them were simple. Een Bai Kong, arrange a quiet courtyard for me as well. Look at me, it's not safe for me to wander around with 2 girls. Nongju asked without any trace of politeness. Een Bai Kong coldly glanced at her and snorted, "You've, Mr. Nongju, have a wide range of connections, do you think you don't have a place to stay? You're not joking, right?" His words meant rejection. At the side, Lu Yanqing was speechless. She glanced at Hibiscus through the green veil, then closed her red lips again. She wanted to say something to Een Bai Kong, but after thinking about it, she felt that it was inappropriate. After all, this wasn't her territory, so she couldn't help Een Bai Kong make decisions. Then forget it. Nongju shrugged her shoulders indifferently, then turned to Hibiscus apologetically. "Hibiscus, my face is a little small, and I've made you suffer. Come, let's go to the inn at the foot of the mountain and see if there are any empty rooms. I believe that if we look from one to another, we'll definitely find one. Ze, come, let's go down the mountain." "It's all right," Hibiscus said weakly. She didn't think that there was any difference between staying at the foot of the mountain and the top. Ze pouted her lips at Een Bai Kong. Een Bai Kong snorted coldly. This Nongju was obviously pretending to be pitiful. How could this old man's god of wealth peak be a place that anyone could stay at? Lu Yanqing's expression became strange. Why did she feel that Nongju was deliberately tricking Een Bai Kong? If Een Bai Kong really offended that person, with that person's thunderous methods, he wouldn't be able to argue at that time. This cornucopia association, what a joke. If this girl was really that person's disciple, then she would have offended that person's entire family. Who would dare to not give that person face? Sikongju's forehead was drenched in cold sweat. His master still hadn't discovered it. He hurriedly moved in front of Nongju and awkwardly cupped his hands. "Mr. Nongju, please wait a moment. I'll discuss it with my master." "No need. Your god of wealth peak isn't a place that ordinary people can stay at. The 3 of us are a little small, so we don't dare to disturb you. I'd better bring my 2 girls along to beg for a place to stay." Nongju sneered sinisterly. Yet, his face revealed an expression that said, "Just you wait and see, I'll teach you a lesson when the time comes." Lu Yanqing's red lips slightly opened as she secretly smiled bitterly. This Nongju really wanted to trick Een Bai Kong. Begging on the streets. Sikongju almost choked to death by these words. He repeatedly smiled apologetically. "Mister, please wait a moment." Before he could finish, he heard Een Bai Kong shout, "Sikong, what are you trying to do?" This was really rebellious. A disciple actually went against his master's words. "Master! Old man, take a good look first." Sikongju almost cried. He hurriedly transmitted his voice to Een Bai Kong. "Master, look at that girl called Farong. The jade pendant on her waist, this disciple seems to have seen it somewhere before." Since things had already escalated to this point, he didn't dare to say it out loud. If he said it out loud, it would put his master in a difficult position. At that time, he would definitely blame himself for not saying it earlier. He could only use a roundabout way to remind his master and let his master decide for himself. Een Bai Kong's face was full of anger as he casually swept a glance. But it was this casual glance that caused Een Bai Kong's expression to stiffen. He couldn't tell what kind of expression was on his face, but it was very rich and interesting. The half-palm-sized black jade pendant with cloud patterns didn't seem to be very eye-catching. But the most frightening thing was that there was a Bai character engraved on it. If you asked Een Bai Kong if he had seen this thing before, he would tell you that he had seen it before. Moreover, he had seen it several times. Don't look down on such an unremarkable little thing. But to some people, it was like a death warrant. Yin Baikong currently had this kind of feeling. The jade pendant that Bai Changchun had carried with him for many years, why would it be on her? Yin Baikong kept asking himself this question in his mind. Miss, where did you get this jade pendant from? Yin Baikong pointed at Furong's waist with a complicated expression. After hearing Nongzhu's pitiful words, Furong really didn't have a good impression of this old woman. Plus, she was too innocent and didn't know how to hide her likes and dislikes. With a face full of disgust, she said, "My master gave it to me." "What does it have to do with you?" Yin Baikong almost choked on her words. A mere core formation stage little girl actually dared to talk to him, one of the top 10 experts in the world, a cultivator of the late soul severing stage, in such a manner. She must be tired of living. But without a doubt, this also showed that although her cultivation level wasn't high, she didn't put him in her eyes at all. How many people in the world dared to not put a cultivator of the late soul severing stage in their eyes? Not to mention this little girl. This jade pendant belonged to Bai Changchun, and she said her master gave it to her. Then her master is... Yin Baikong's expression twitched. He angrily stared at Nongzhu and fiercely transmitted his voice. "Nongzhu, what do you mean by this? Are you deliberately tricking me? Are you trying to sow discord between me and Bai Changchun? Arrogant. Scared you to death." Nongzhu's stomach was already overjoyed, but on the surface, she coldly transmitted her voice back. "Don't think that just because your cultivation level is high, you can wrongly accuse others. When did I sow discord between you and Bai Changchun? What I said earlier has anything to do with Bai Changchun. Don't tell me you don't know who this little girl's master is." Yin Baikong yelled as he clenched his teeth. "Whether I know who her master is or not, it's none of your business. Don't tell me I have to report to you. Who gave you such a bad habit?" Nongzhu scolded him with satisfaction. These two guys looked at each other and didn't say anything, but how could Lu Yanqing and Sikongju not see that the two of them were already quarreling with each other? Third brother Xan had never seen Bai Changchun before, but now that the topic of the late soul severing stage cultivator was actually related to Furong's jade pendant, he couldn't help but pay attention. The word Bai on the black jade pendant made his eyebrows twitch. This was obviously an ordinary jade pendant that indicated a surname, but the surname, Bai, seemed to be rare in the cultivation world. The attention of a late soul severing stage cultivator and his master's attitude immediately made third brother Xan think of a certain person with the surname Bai. He remembered that this girl named Furong seemed to be Yu Qincho's woman. Chapter 617. Yin Baikong's good mood these few days disappeared in an instant. Every time he met this guy, he would feel disgusted for a while, but he couldn't do anything to him. Suppressing the anger in his heart, he transmitted a message: "Nongzhu, don't go overboard. Don't think that no one in this world is Bai Changchun's match." He had thought it through. If Nongzhu was persistent and attracted by Changchun's attention, he could only ask Niao Yud for help. He didn't believe that an immortal couldn't deal with Bai Changchun. Nongzhu was stunned. Was there anyone in this world who was Bai Changchun's match? The old fox wouldn't joke about this. She subconsciously asked, "Who?" "There's always someone better, it's none of your business." Yin Baikong transmitted, "I'll arrange a house for you halfway up the mountain. You can't live there, right?" He had already admitted defeat. After all, he didn't dare to provoke Bai Changchun. If he couldn't get Niao Yud to help, he would be in trouble. "Of course, I'll live there," Nongzhu replied. He didn't have any deep grudges with Yin Baikong. He just didn't like the old fox, so he couldn't help but provoke him every time. In fact, Yin Baikong never provoked him. Now that he heard that Niao Yud was staying on this heavily guarded mountain, he also wanted to stay there. It would be more convenient for him to chat with Yu Qiancho. Now that he had fooled the other party and achieved his goal, he naturally had to stop while he was ahead. He couldn't risk his life against the old fox. The old fox wasn't someone to be trifled with. However, he was still pondering over the old fox's words. Was there really anyone in this world who was old Bai's match? Hearing this, Yin Baikong's anger subsided a little. He turned to Sikong-ju and said, Lady Furong is new here. Make the arrangements. He didn't mention Nongju, but Furong. It was obvious that he was giving Furong some face. After that, he floated into the Hall of Wealth to avoid any more awkwardness. Third brother Axion looked at Furong and confirmed his guess. She should be that person's disciple. Divine Dr. Liu, Mr. Nongju, Lady Furong, please follow me. Sikong-ju personally led them down. Not long after, Sikong-ju rushed over from the foot of the mountain and rushed into the Hall of Wealth. The slightly gloomy Yin Baikong seemed to have eyes on the back of his head as he asked in a deep voice, Has everything been arranged? It's done. Sikong-ju cupped his hands and said, Master, Bing Qingzi brought Yan Juixing into the cornucopia. Yin Baikong suddenly turned around, his eyes narrowed as he said with a mischievous smile, You still dare to come, you've got guts. Niu Yud's foresight is extraordinary. Last time, we were fooled by Bing Qingzi. Yan Juixing. There must be something mysterious about this kid. Arrange for someone to keep an eye on him. Be careful not to alert the enemy. If you find him leaving the cornucopia alone, tell me immediately. I'll deal with him myself. Sikong-ju's eyes lit up. No wonder Master didn't pursue the matter from back then. It seems that this Yan Juixing is still a problem. If that's the case, then the matter from back then still had merit. He immediately replied, Don't worry, Master. There are many people in cornucopia now. No one will find out if 1 or 2 people are inserted to monitor Yan Juixing. I'll arrange it right away. There weren't many people in Bing Qingzi's group. They only brought Yan Juixing and Man Hu. In order to avoid unnecessary trouble, the 3 of them directly descended into the backyard of Di Rong Kingdom's shop. The manager of this place had already brought people to welcome them. Man Hu dismissed the people who came to welcome them. Who knew that after a while, the manager returned and said that Hu Changsho's 3rd son, Hu Yuntian, had come to pay a visit. Man Hu glanced at his master and immediately asked the manager to bring them in. When Hu Yuntian arrived, he couldn't avoid greeting and stated his purpose. It turned out that Hu Changsho had sent him over, saying that he had something to discuss with Bing Qingzi. Before Bing Qingzi left, he took a glance at Yan Juixing and left without saying anything. Actually, he didn't want to bring Yan Juixing this time, mainly because he was worried that something might happen. However, Yan Juixing insisted on coming. He said that if someone really wanted to deal with him, it would be more dangerous for him to separate from Bing Qingzi. Bing Qingzi thought about it and agreed. Plus, he couldn't force Yan Juixing to go, so he brought him along. However, he told Yan Juixing to try his best not to meet Niu Yud. No one knew the depth of Niu Yud, so he had to figure out Niu Yud's background first. There were only 3 people left in the backyard. Man Hu and Hu Yuntian were obviously very familiar with each other. The 2 of them were chatting politely. Brother Hu, this is my junior brother, Yan Juixing. Man Hu introduced. Yan Juixing nodded slightly. I guessed it. Hu Yuntian laughed and waved his hand, It's my first time meeting Brother Yan. I'll treat you to a fun place. Man Hu said, I wonder what kind of place it is for Brother Hu to find it fun. I wonder if the 2 of you have heard of the Sleeping Spring Inn. Hu Yuntian smiled. A trace of coldness flashed in Yan Juixing's eyes. Man Hu squinted his eyes. Those who were well informed would know that Niu Yud was currently living in the Sleeping Spring Inn. However, this guy insisted on bringing Yan Juixing to the Sleeping Spring Inn. It's just a brothel. What fun can there be? I'm not interested. Man who refused without batting an eyelid. However, Yen Juixing continued, is it the sleeping spring in where Senior Yin and Senior Nyo wrote a poem together? That's right. It's because the two seniors wrote a poem together that this sleeping spring in has a special flavor. Hu Yintian asked with a deep meaning, why? Is Brother Yen interested? He was here to probe under his father's orders. After Yin Bai Kong and Nyo Yud met, they actually did not pursue the matter of Yen Juixing. This had long made Hu Changsho suspicious, so he sent his son here to find a way to probe. In fact, Hu Changsho was not the only one who suspected this. I heard that Senior Nyo has a lover in the sleeping spring inn called Yen Yu. Yen Juixing continued to ask. Ha! Speaking of that Yen Yu, Senior Nyo's eyes are really good. Hu Yuntian laughed. Eldest senior brother. Yen Juixing smiled at Man Hu and said, the sleeping spring inn is famous in the world. Plus, it's hard to refuse Brother Hu's hospitality. Why don't we go and take a look? Man Hu was startled, but he knew that Yen Juixing was hard to persuade. There were some things that even his master could not persuade, so there was no point in persuading him. Thus, he did not say anything. Hu Yuntian laughed and immediately waved his hand, making a gesture of invitation. The three of them left together. There were fresh flowers, delicious wine and delicacies, and beautiful women dancing and dancing. Even if the price was frighteningly high, there were still many cultivators who came to the sleeping spring inn. It was said that cultivators should cultivate with a pure heart and few desires, and the cultivation world had always advocated this. But in reality, how many people could truly achieve a pure heart and few desires? Everyone had a pure heart and few desires, standing aloof from worldly affairs. What was the point of fighting and killing in the cultivation world? Wasn't it to have a longer life to enjoy? You also wanted to enjoy life unfettered, and others also wanted to enjoy life unfettered. Everyone wanted freedom. However, human nature dictated that when a person could truly enjoy freedom, he or she would definitely trample on the freedom of others. Walking on the road, it was possible to accidentally step on a rock. You could easily kick it away, but when there was a huge mountain blocking the road in front of you, could you easily kick it away? No matter how free one was, there would always be troublesome stones and mountains. The difference was that the degree of freedom and ability were always proportional. There would always be stumbling stones and mountains in front of them. Was your ability to kick away a stone or flatten a mountain? If you could do it, there would be an even higher mountain waiting for you in front of them. When you could do it, you might become a stone or a mountain in the eyes of others. They would also want to kick you away and get rid of you, because they also wanted to have greater freedom. Therefore, freedom was a very contradictory slogan. It was an idealistic phrase and very illusory. Only when one's ability was big or small could one distinguish the degree of freedom. No one had truly obtained unfettered freedom. Those who loudly shouted for freedom and unfettered should first ask themselves, why do you want freedom? Eat when you want to eat, drink when you want to drink, play when you want to play, and be happy when you want to be happy. Who would provide it? Who else would sacrifice their own freedom to provide for you to eat, drink, and be merry? It was still the same sentence. The size of your ability determined your degree of freedom. If you wanted to enjoy a high degree of freedom without relying on your ability, perhaps only your parents and relatives would be willing to sacrifice their freedom to do anything for you. But that was only for a while, not for a lifetime. Otherwise, how could there be such a good thing? If you wanted to trample on other people's freedom to fulfill yourself, sooner or later, you would become a stone or a mountain in the eyes of others. Hard cultivation with a clear mind and few desires was only a process to improve one's ability, not to destroy one's humanity. How many cultivators would be willing to cultivate to the point where they even lost their humanity? If they really reached the point where they had no feelings, what meaning would there be to cultivating? That would be no different from rotten wood. The minimum expenditure of 100,000 top-grade spirit stones per person in the Spring Slumber Tower was a sky-high price, but it was undoubtedly a threshold to test the ability of each cultivator. This place had a great reputation, but not everyone could come in and enjoy it. Freedom, don't mention the past. Life is full of ups and downs, and memories can't be erased. Love and hate are still in the heart. A refreshing and touching zither tune suddenly sounded from the Spring Slumber Tower. Although the Spring Slumber Tower had a great reputation, people inevitably became tired after paying attention to it for a long time. There was no longer a crowd in front of the tower, and the cultivators on the street stopped for a short while at most. At this time, everyone's attention was focused on the cornucopia and treasure tower's limit-breaking pill, and the reservation had begun. However, when a faint sad zither tune floated out of the Spring Slumber Tower, it immediately froze the hurried footsteps on the street. They all turned around to listen to the sudden sound of nature, and their expressions were very surprised. Although they had never heard the zither tune and the voice before, they could only use the word beautiful to describe it. More and more people lingered in front of the Spring Slumber Tower. No wonder it's the Spring Slumber Tower that Senior Ian and Senior Nyo wrote together. I didn't expect it to have such a stunner and such a masterpiece. Yes. This woman's charm is even better than that owner Yen, tsk. Just the look in her eyes is enough to make people restless. What was most unexpected was that the Spring Slumber Tower actually got Yu Qianqiu's masterpiece. Although Yu Qianqiu is not a very good person, his zither music is undoubtedly the best in the world. Haven't you heard? Senior Nyo is more familiar with Yu Qianqiu's zither music. Maybe it was Senior Nyo who taught this song to the Spring Slumber Tower. It's very possible. But it's really a pity that the reservation for the limit-breaking pill had to be made at this time, and we were summoned by the door and had to leave midway. But then again, the 100,000 upper-grade spirit stones were definitely well spent. Two cultivators who hurried out of the Spring Slumber Tower sighed endlessly, which made the onlookers in front of the tower itch. However, most of them were short of money, and not many could enter at any time. Chapter 6:18. Halfway down the God of Wealth Peak, among the lush greenery, flying beams and painted rafters were faintly discernible. Large and small houses blended together with the shade of greenery. Other than some of these houses for distinguished guests to rest, most of the houses were for the World Chamber of Commerce's high-ranking people to live in. After Nongzhu occupied a house, she looked around in a good mood. Compared to the surrounding houses, the house arranged by Sikongju was definitely considered outstanding among the nearby buildings. It was large and imposing enough, and should be the kind reserved for the most distinguished guests to live in. It seemed that she had benefited from Furong. Otherwise, it would be strange if the old fox didn't drive her down the mountain. Nongzhu glanced at the two girls who were also looking around and said happily, "There are many rooms here. Both of you go pick one you like to live in." The two girls looked at each other hesitantly. It seemed that there was nothing to be picky about where to live. Finally, Zi asked weakly, "Master, didn't you say that Yu Qianqiu would come to Cornucopia? Where is he?" Nongzhu was startled. She had only told by Changchun that Nyo Yud was Yu Qianqiu. She really didn't know if she should tell the two girls. She thought for a while and said, "You two stay here first. Yu Qianqiu hasn't arrived yet. When he arrives, he'll come find us immediately." After casually brushing off the two maidservants, he warned them not to run around and walked out of the courtyard by himself. Sikongju arranged a disciple to wait for orders outside. When he saw Nongzhu come out, he immediately bowed. "Take me to Nyo Yud's house to have a look." Nongzhu ordered without hesitation. The disciple immediately led the way in front. After shuttling through the intersecting steps under the shade for a while, the two of them walked towards a very imposing house. When they were not far from the gate, they saw three people walking up the steps in the opposite forest. Nongzhu was startled and thought to herself, "Why did she come here? A World Chamber of Commerce disciple led Lu Yanqing and her disciple Third Xian over. The three people opposite also paused, obviously not expecting Nongzhu to come here. The two groups of people met in front of the house's gate. Then, both sides dismissed the World Commerce's disciples. Nongzhu. Lu Yanqing nodded. Nongzhu looked around and said suspiciously, Lu Yanqing, what are you doing here? Could it be that he's looking for Niu Yud? As he said this, he glanced towards the inside of the house. Lu Yanqing lightly explained, I met Niu Yud at the Ghost Manor. At that time, he said that Lao San brought Yu Qianqiu to meet him in Deyang City. When I went back to ask Lao San, he said that he didn't remember this. I came here today to let third brother and Niu Yud meet and see if the third brother Xian that Niu Yud mentioned is my disciple. Nongzhu was speechless and thought to herself that Yu Qianqiu must have lost his mind. Could Xian Lao San bring Yu Qianqiu to meet Niu Yud? Wasn't this lie a little too ridiculous? He didn't know that Yu Qianqiu was angry that Fang Ming used his name to pick up girls, so he casually lied. If Yu Qianqiu knew that the mysterious woman was Xian Lao San's master, Lu Yanqing, he wouldn't have said such a thing even if he was beaten to death. Hee hee. There's such a thing. Nongzhu laughed. Little did he know that the eyes behind the gauze hat were carefully observing the changes in his expression. Perhaps Amano, Li Qiuxiang, and Hai Wei heard the commotion outside, so they walked out. As for Mo Xiaojun, he was sent by Yu Qianqiu to Treasure Tower to inquire about the market. Li Qiuxiang had never seen Lu Yanqing, but Tian Yi and Hai Wei looked at each other. Wasn't this woman wearing gauze hat the mysterious woman that appeared in the Ghost Manor that day? How could she appear here? Nongzhu and the other two stared at the horrifying and ugly Li Qiuxiang. They must have heard about this woman's horrifying actions in the treasure bowl. May I know who you are looking for? Tian Yi cupped his fist and asked. In fact, he had already guessed that the three people were looking for Niu Yud. It was impossible for them to be here. Xian Lao San glanced at their cultivation and answered, I'm Xian Lao San from Lingfang Valley. Then he pointed to Lu Yanqing and Nongzhu respectively and explained, this is my master, the master of Lingfang Valley, and this is Mr. Nongzhu, the master of Purple Bamboo Forest in the South Sea. We're here to visit Senior Niu Yud. Tian Yi and the other two were shocked. They didn't expect that the two famous masters of spirit severing stage had arrived. They immediately bowed and said, Greetings, seniors. Don't be so polite. Nongzhu waved his hand and said, Where's Niu Yud? Is he here? Senior Niu is not here. Tian Yi said respectfully. Where is he? Nongzhu frowned and said, Do you know where he is? It's not our place to ask about Senior Niu's whereabouts. We don't know where he is either. He should be at the foot of the mountain. Tian Yi replied. They were not well informed. Those who were well informed naturally knew that Niu Yud was either at the God of Wealth Peak or at the Spring Slumber Tower. But he couldn't say it out loud. When Niu Yud was not here, Nongzhu and Lu Yanqing looked at each other and didn't say much. They turned around and left. Tian Yi and the other two saw them off. Nongzhu and Lu Yanqing walked shoulder to shoulder on the steps of the mountain. Xian Lao San followed them from afar. Nongzhu was still trying to figure out where Yu Qianqiu had gone. Suddenly, she heard the beauty beside her ask, Nongzhu, I heard that you know Yu Qianqiu and Niu Yud? Oh. Nongzhu was slightly stunned. Then she immediately laughed and said, I like to make friends. Nongzhu, tell me honestly, is Lady Furong Bai Changchun's disciple? Lu Yanqing asked. Ha! Beauty Lu, there is no need to ask so clearly. Nongzhu paused and said, Anyway, what you see is the truth. Lu Yanqing nodded slightly and said, I just find it a little strange. Bai Changchun has never been defeated in his life. He is extremely arrogant. When his cultivation reached the early stage of deity transformation, he was already invincible. Now his cultivation is so terrifying that no one knows how deep it is. Being invincible must be lonely. So he fades out of the world and quietly stands in the demon region. He looks down on the world because there is no one in the world who is worthy of his attention. He is an insurmountable monument, an immortal legend. Ordinary people and things can't enter his eyes. And from what I see, although Lady Furong has extraordinary talent, she is not a genius. Plus, the opening of the East Holy Land is not far away. Why would he accept a female disciple at this time? And he even gave her the jade pendant that he always carries with him. It is really unimaginable. You can be his confidant now. Nongju laughed and said, that old guy always has a cold face. Who knows what he is thinking? Don't you know? Lu Yanqing asked in a strange tone. Look at what you are saying. I am not a roundworm in his stomach. I really don't know. Nongju denied on the spot. Even in front of the world's most beautiful woman, she could still lie without batting an eyelid. She was indeed a veteran among flowers. Nongju. Lu Yanqing suddenly stopped and asked in a voice transmission, but as far as I know, Furong is Yu Qianqiu's woman. Bai Changchun would not accept someone else's woman as his disciple. Also, after Wen Lanfeng returned from the demon region in defeat, he suddenly announced that he would support Yu Qianqiu. This is not Wen Lanfeng's character at all. Also, Ziyi seemed to have been with Yu Qianqiu when they were in the Chinese cultivation world. What was going on? Don't tell me that Yu Qianqiu has nothing to do with Bai Changchun. Nongju also stopped and said in a surprised voice, Lu Yanqing, what do you want to say? Why can't I understand what you mean? You don't think that Yu Qianqiu has something to do with Bai Changchun, do you? What do you think? Lu Yanqing said indifferently, with Furong's condition, Bai Changchun will not like her. If you ask me, it is Yu Qianqiu who is difficult to see through. Bai Changchun is more likely to like him. Do you think that Bai Changchun loves me because of my dog? Nonsense, your imagination is really rich. Nongju shrugged disapprovingly. Seeing that he still did not admit it, Lu Yanqing did not bother to explain and continued to walk along the steps of the mountainside. You think what you want, I just won't admit it. Nongju secretly laughed. After a few steps, she suddenly heard Lu Yanqing's voice. Maybe others don't know, but I know that Yu Qianqiu is Niu Yud. Nongju couldn't find it funny anymore. She stood still and stared at the graceful figure walking up the stairs with her eyes and mouth wide open. After a long time, he cursed under his breath and quickly followed after them. The two of them stood in a pavilion on the mountainside without saying a word. Third brother Axian was very conscious and did not follow them. This pavilion was built in a relatively prominent position and could enjoy most of the scenery of the cornucopia. They stood in silence for a while. Nongju sighed softly and said, humans. There is no need to say it out loud. It is so boring. I just want to confirm it. If I really want to say it, you and I will not stand here. Lu Yanqing said lightly. Hey! What's going on? Nongju looked down the mountain and felt strange. Lu Yanqing glanced at the crowded place and said, don't you know? That is the position of the treasure tower. They all want to reserve the limit-breaking pill made by Niu Yud. Sigh. Niu Yud's elixir and Yin Baikong's tricks. What are they trying to do? I mean that position. Nongju pointed to another place where many people were lingering. This time, Lu Yanqing said sarcastically, that is the spring slumber building where Niu Yud and Yin Baikong work together to write a poem. These two are really good partners. They work together to write poems and sell pills. Nongju laughed and thought to herself, this Yu Qianqiu is really not a good person. But I think he is going to make a fortune this time. I don't know if Wen Lanfeng went to join in the fun. Why don't we go to the Wen family shop and have a look? Nongju changed the topic and said, is it convenient for you to go? Why would it be inconvenient for me? You are just thinking too much. I came here to see him. Lu Yanqing turned to third brother Xan and said, you go back first. You don't need to follow me. Then she took the lead and flew towards the direction of the Wen family's shop. Nongju winked and chuckled, then flew into the air and followed. Coincidentally, the Wen family's shop was diagonally opposite the Sleeping Spring Tower. The two landed in the backyard of the Wen family's shop. Immediately, a guard shouted, who are you? How dare you trespass here? Obviously, he did not know them. What are you shouting for? Nongju said disdainfully. Wen Lanfeng's voice came from the upper floor of the shop. Is it Nongju? Come straight up. Chapter 6:19. Mr. Nongju. The man was shocked on the spot. Everyone in the Wen family knew that Nongju was Wen Lanfeng's best friend. So he bowed and apologized. Nongju would not argue with him. She waved her hand casually and went upstairs in the shop. The top floor was empty and clean. The diamond-shaped wooden lattice window was half open, and a guqin was placed beside the window. Wen Lanfeng stood by the desk with his eyes closed and hands behind his back. He seemed to be listening to something. Nongju rushed over and was very curious when she saw this scene. Who else did you bring? Wen Lanfeng asked with his eyes closed. He could tell that someone was going upstairs. Nongju walked to him and said with a smile, you'll know when you look back. Wen Lanfeng slowly opened his eyes and looked over. He was stunned, and the expression on his face became complicated. He turned around and said with a wry smile, why are you here? I heard that you came to Cornucopia, so I came to have a look. Lu Yanqing said. Ha! Nongju looked at the guqin on the desk and was overjoyed. Lu Yanqing looked at the guqin and was speechless. Wen Lanfeng's old face suddenly became angry. He stared at Nongju and shouted, what are you laughing at? Anyone who knew something about the past between Wen Lanfeng and Lu Yanqing knew that Wen Lanfeng really tried his best to pursue Lu Yanqing. Knowing that Lu Yanqing liked music, he immediately studied hard and practiced hard, turning from an ignorant person to a person of this path. The reason why Nongju and Wen Lanfeng could become friends was that Wen Lanfeng admired Nongju's good flute, so he came to the South Sea Purple Bamboo Forest for advice. Nothing. Nongju waved her hand and asked curiously, are you practicing the guqin here? Wen Lanfeng gritted his teeth, but Lu Yanqing was there. He still wanted to maintain his demeanor, so it was not convenient to argue with Nongju. He calmed down a little, walked to the window, pointed to the direction of the spring slumber house diagonally opposite, and said, listen carefully to the song coming from there. Nongju and Lu Yanqing both walked over. At first, they only heard the noise of the street. Then they held their breath and immediately distinguished the lingering and sad tune mixed in the noise. Upon hearing this, the two of them were immediately engrossed in it. The three of them stood quietly in front of the window, savoring the faint sadness in the song. After a long time, Lu Yanqing let out a sigh of relief and murmured, don't mention the past anymore. Life is full of ups and downs. Even if the memories can't be erased, love and hate are still in my heart. If you really want to cut off the past and let tomorrow continue, don't bother asking for my news anymore. Wen Lanfeng, who was silently looking at her, murmured, love is a difficult problem. It dazzles people. Perhaps it is possible to forget the pain, but it is not easy to forget you. You never really left me. You will always be in my heart. I still love you. I can't do anything about myself. Nongju answered with a sense of loss, because I still have a dream, and you are still in my heart. I am always easily moved by the past, and my heart always aches for you. Don't linger on my unintentional tenderness in the years. Don't ask me if we'll meet again. Don't care if my words are insincere. What a sad song. Lu Yanqing shook her head and sighed. She continued the lyrics that Nongzhu had not finished reading. Why don't you understand? As long as there is love, there will be pain. One day you will know that life will not be different without me. Life is too rushed. I am so afraid that my eyes are always hazy with tears. Forget me and there will be no pain. Leave the past in the wind. The three of them stood in front of the window, each thinking. Lu Yanqing, who was the first to wake up, stared at the direction of the song outside the window and asked, "Isn't that the Sleeping Spring building? Is it the girl in the brothel who is playing and singing?" She was quite curious. Was there such a talented girl in the brothel? I sent someone to check. It is indeed a girl in the brothel. Wen Lanfeng shook his head and smiled bitterly, but this song was composed by Yu Qianqiu. According to the girl in the brothel, it was Yu Qianqiu who wrote it for her. Is it Yu Qianqiu again? Lu Yanqing nodded slightly and said, no wonder. It is estimated that only Yu Qianqiu can make such a wonderful song. It seems that Yu Qianqiu has also been trapped by love. If he did not empathize, how could he make such an unforgettable song? Yu Qianqiu. Did he make it? Is it true? Do you believe it? Nongzhu's face was full of disbelief. To be honest, he had long heard of such a thing, but he had never believed it. Based on his understanding of Yu Qianqiu, what overflowing talent. That was simply nonsense. Yu Qianqiu probably plagiarized it from somewhere. But so far, it seemed that everyone recognized Yu Qianqiu's talent. Now even Wen Lanfeng and Lu Yanqing thought so. What the hell? You don't think it was Yu Qianqiu? Wen Lanfeng asked curiously. He believed that Nongzhu knew more about Yu Qianqiu than he did. Lu Yanqing also stared through the gauze curtain with burning eyes. I'm not sure. Nongzhu smiled and immediately changed the topic. Wen Lanfeng, why are you here? Do you want to buy some limit-breaking pills? Or... He looked at Lu Yanqing. Although he did not finish his words, his meaning was obvious. Wen Lanfeng was slightly annoyed. I didn't know Yanqing would come. I just wanted to see who Niu Yud is. Lu Yanqing was a little surprised. Didn't he know that Niu Yud was Yu Qianqiu? Oh. Did you see it? Nongzhu laughed. Wen Lanfeng stared out of the window at the spring slumber house diagonally opposite. He snorted and said, I have no interest in seeing him now. How powerful can a person who hangs out in a brothel every day be? What is he doing in a brothel? Nongzhu was surprised. What else can he do? Everyone knows about this. Don't you know? Wen Lanfeng snorted and said, Niu Yud now lives in the spring slumber house. It is said that the madam of the spring slumber house has become his exclusive woman. Many people have seen the two of them fooling around every day. Nongzhu's face instantly darkened. Before he came here, he heard that Niu Yud and Yin Baikong joined hands to write poems in the brothel. He did not think it was a big deal. As for what happened after that, he had been rushing with the two girls, so he really did not know. I came here with Zi and Furong from thousands of miles away, but he is hiding in a brothel and fooling around. Nongzhu sneered with a gloomy face and said, he is really a shameless guy. Lu Yanqing's eyebrows under the gauze hat were tightly knitted together. Is there any misunderstanding? I have seen him in the ghost village. He is poetic and has seen through the world. He doesn't look like the kind of person who messes around. I think it's better to clarify the matter before making a conclusion. Hearing this, Nongzhu's face finally looked a little better. Unexpectedly, Wen Lanfeng was stunned and said, poetic and heroic. Sleeping in spring without knowing the dawn, birds chirping everywhere, wind and rain at night, who knows how many flowers have fallen. Yanqing, Do you think a person who can write such a lewd poem for a brothel is poetic and heroic? Lu Yanqing's face turned red when she heard this. Fortunately, the gauze hat blocked the change of expression on her face. Then she fell silent and did not say anything. Nongzhu's face that had just calmed down turned black again. She snorted and said, "I was wondering why I couldn't find him. It turns out that he is hiding in a brothel. I have to pay him a visit." In the backyard of the spring slumber house, Yu Qianqiu moved a chair and sat by the small lotus pond. Listening to the song of the Enchantress of 100 Charms in the front hall, he felt a toothache. No matter how he sat, it was not comfortable. From the first time she sang, he guessed that she was looking for him. Later, he got confirmation from Yanyu that she was really looking for Yu Qianqiu. Mo Xiaojun hurriedly turned from the back door of the front hall and approached to salute. "Sir. How are the reservations for the limit-breaking pills?" Yu Qianqiu turned his head and asked. He originally wanted to go to the treasure house to check it himself. However, his current status was very high. Wherever he went, he would cause a commotion. It was really not convenient for him to go to a crowded place. The World Chamber of Commerce first took out 10 limit-breaking pills for everyone to test on the spot. When the reservations were officially started, 5,000 limit-breaking pills were sold out in less than a quarter of an hour. D. Rome Nation's Ice Palace and East Righteous Nation's Cloud Palace had the most reservations. They each got 100 pills. The other 300 or so factions divided the remaining 4,000 or so. It wasn't too much, but they didn't get much. As for the others, they didn't even get a chance to order before they were all snatched up by the major forces, Mo Xiaojun said. Earlier in the treasure tower, he had been very arrogant. While everyone else was squeezing around in the hall, because Niuyud had informed the World Chamber of Commerce in advance, he had entered through the back door and wandered around the counter selling items. Without Bing Qingzi and Hu Changshou's support, Yin Baikong wouldn't have the confidence to make a fortune. "It's reasonable to give them some benefits," Yu Qianqiu said as he stretched out his hand. Mo Xiaojun immediately handed him a jade archive. The treasure house was the largest trading place in the treasure bowl. Many of the buyers and sellers didn't want to show their faces in public, so they used the treasure house to publicize their transactions. Regardless of whether they were buying or selling an item, the price would be clearly marked at the treasure house and a sign would be hung. Of course, the treasure house wouldn't work for nothing. They would take 10% of the transaction as commission. The Jade Archive Mo Xiaojun gave him recorded the day's listed transaction information. Yu Qianqiu requested that he send over the updated listing information every day. 7-star blood orchid. Yu Qianqiu muttered as he injected his consciousness into the archive. He skimmed through the Jade Archive and was suddenly attracted by the familiar words. He discovered that someone was buying the 7-star blood orchid in large quantities. The price was 20 million high-grade spirit stones per plant. It was slightly cheaper than the auction price in the Huaxia cultivation world, but not by much. Buying in large quantities. Yu Qianqiu frowned. He was very familiar with the 7-star blood orchid. There were quite a few of them in Utopia. As far as he knew, the blood fruit of the 7-star blood orchid was a good item that could help a cultivator break through to the nascent soul stage. In other words, it could help a core formation cultivator break through to the nascent soul stage. But now, the 7 treasures pill was being sold cheaply. Each pill was only 2 million high-grade spirit stones. Who would actually spend 10 times the price to buy the 7-star blood orchid? Could it be that someone had a large number of Adumbra flowers and wanted to buy a large number of blood orchids to refine the 7 orifices exquisite pill? That didn't seem possible, did it? Yu Qianqiu's gaze was uncertain. Could it be that the 7-star blood orchid had some other miraculous effects that he didn't know about? Chapter 620. After mulling over it for a long time, he became suspicious of this matter, so he made a mental note of it. After injecting his divine sense into the Jade Archive, he went through all the information in it. He realized that there were quite a lot of items that had been purchased or purchased. They were densely packed and dazzling. Furthermore, most of these items that could be traded in the treasure tower were extremely valuable. Each item was worth more than 10 million high-grade spirit stones. Yu Qianqiu sighed to himself. With so many items, even if he could sell half of them, the world commerce would still make a fortune just by taking a 10% commission. As he was sighing, a figure landed in the courtyard. Mo Xiaojun, who was standing beside him, bowed and greeted, "Senior Sikong." Sikong Ju smiled and nodded. He cupped his fists at Yu Qianqiu and greeted, "Senior Niu." Yu Qianqiu glanced at him, then waved Mo Xiaojun away before standing up and asking, "What is it?" "My master invites Senior up to the summit for a chat." Sikong Ju smiled. His attitude was extremely respectful. The explosive orders for the limit-breaking pills made everyone in the world commerce feel invigorated. Oh my! Before the items were even sold, they had already received a deposit of 5 billion. It would be strange if they weren't excited. Everyone believed that after this auction, there would be plenty of rewards for everyone. Yu Qianqiu smiled. He guessed that after Yin Baikong received the deposit, he would rush to deliver the money to him and urge for the goods. Without further ado, he threw out his flying sword and flew towards the God of Wealth Peak. Sikong Ju looked around and couldn't help but smile bitterly. This was the first time in his life that he came to a brothel so diligently. It couldn't be helped. Who asked this great god to like this place? At the summit of the God of Wealth Peak, Yin Baikong smiled widely and cupped his fists in greeting. Yu Qianqiu landed on the ground and sheathed his sword. He smiled and said, "Congratulations, Brother Yin. I'm sure you've earned quite a lot this time." Sigh. Brother Niu is too kind. In the end, it's all thanks to you. Yin Baikong took out 6 bulging storage pouches as if he was performing a magic trick and handed them over. "Here are 6 billion. Please purchase another 5,000 limit-breaking pills. I'll have to trouble Brother Niu to make another trip to the upper realm." Yu Qianqiu did not stand on ceremony. He took the storage bag and put it away. Previously, when the World Commerce Chamber of Commerce announced the price of the limit-breaking pill at 2 million per pill, Yin Baikong was probably afraid that Niu Yud would be unhappy to see him earn too much, so he invited him over to placate him. Then, he solemnly vowed, "After estimating the financial resources of the various forces, we set the price of the limit-breaking pill at 2 million per pill." Of course, I, Yin Baikong, will not let Brother Niu suffer a loss. The remaining 1 billion from last time will be Brother Niu's, you don't have to return it. The price of the limit-breaking pill also rose from 5 billion for every 5,000 pills to 6 billion. Brother Niu, what do you think? This was the first time in Yin Baikong's entire life that he was a buyer who took the initiative to raise the price. The purpose of doing this was naturally to prevent Niu Yud from feeling indignant and refusing to cooperate with him. Actually, his worries were unnecessary. Even if he did not increase the price, Yu Qianqiu would not go back on his words. Of course, if he increased the price, Yu Qianqiu would not object. The last time I went back, I had already pre-ordered a lot of goods. If I have enough money, I believe I can bring back a lot in one go. Yu Qianqiu smiled and said, "Brother Yin, why don't you buy a lot in one go? It will save me a lot of trips." Brother Niu might not know, but the number of people participating in this year's auction far exceeds the previous years. The flow of spirit stones is too large, so it is impossible to transfer too many idle spirit stones at once. We can only rely on the money from the sale of the limit-breaking pill. I hope Brother Niu can understand. Yin Baikong tactfully refused. When doing business, one must have the courage to take risks, but there was no need to take risks now. Since he could safely earn money, why should he take such a big risk? He was not crazy. Who knew what the situation in the immortal world was like? If something unexpected happened, he could minimize the loss to the greatest extent. I understand. Yu Qianqiu nodded with a double meaning and said with a smile, I will go now. Wait a moment. Yin Baikong waved his hand and asked, I wonder when Brother Niu will return. Yu Qianqiu pondered for a moment, then said in a low voice, last time, I have already pre-ordered a lot. This time, I can just go and get the goods directly. I should be back in half a day. Very good. Yin Baikong clapped his hands and praised, but his smile suddenly disappeared. He frowned and asked, Brother Niu, the cornucopia has already begun, why is the Yu Qianqiu not here yet? I am still waiting for his 7 treasure pills. According to the estimated distance, he should arrive in 2 days. Yu Qianqiu looked at him and said with a smile, don't worry, if he doesn't keep his promise, then he can't blame me for standing him up. At that time, I will directly purchase the 7 treasure pills and sell them to you. Ha! That would be for the best. Yin Baikong's face was full of smiles, but he heard Niu Yud say, I will be back as soon as possible. Niu Yud suddenly disappeared in front of him. Yin Baikong was startled and quickly scanned the surroundings with his divine sense. There were no abnormal fluctuations in the surrounding airflow. Niu Yud had disappeared just like that. Yin Baikong couldn't help but let out a breath of cold air. Niu Yud's departure this time was even more bizarre than the last time. In the backyard of the sleeping spring loft, Yin Yu prepared a plate of washed and opened melons and fruits. The arrangement was very exquisite, and she personally brought it over with a smile. However, she found that there was no one sitting on the chair beside the lotus pond, and there was no one around either. Walking into the bungalow, she found that it was also empty. So mysterious, where did he run off to this time? Yen Yu complained and placed the fruit plate on the table inside the house. After a moment of daze, she turned around and walked out the door, but suddenly found that there were 3 more people in the yard, 2 men and 1 woman. The woman was dressed in a green robe and had a slim and outstanding figure. Her face was covered by a green veil and a bamboo hat, so her appearance could not be seen clearly, but her temperament was extraordinary. The 2 men were also outstanding, and one of them was so handsome that no one dared to look directly at him. Even Yan Yu, who had seen many things, felt her heart palpitate. She admitted that she had never seen a man with such outstanding appearance. The 2 men and 1 woman coldly looked at her. The 3 of them were Nongzhu, Wen Lanfeng, and Lu Yanqing. Yan Yu felt a little strange. Niu Yud lived here, but there were still people who dared to trespass. She turned around and found that the cultivation of the 3 people was not something she could see through. However, the 3 of them had the temperament of being above others, so she did not dare to look down on them. She respectfully said, May I know what the 3 of you are here for? Look at your appearance, you look like a prostitute. Nongzhu's face was full of disdain, and she coldly snorted, Are you that Yan Yu? The other party ridiculed her as soon as they arrived, and Yan Yu bit her lip. She did not dare to offend them without knowing their background. Forcing a smile, she said, Yes, I am Yan Yu. Are you looking for me? Who do you think you are? Are you worthy of us looking for you? Nongzhu spoke rudely again, and the expression on his face was even more disgusted. Nongzhu, be careful when you speak. I did not offend you. Lu Yanqing could not bear to listen anymore, and immediately warned him. Then she softly said to Yan Yu, Master Yan, please tell Niu Yu that Lu Yanqing, Wen Lanfeng, and Nongzhu are here to visit. Ah! Yan Yu could not help but exclaim, and the grievance in her heart suddenly turned into anxiety. She glanced at Lu Yanqing, and then fell on the bamboo flute on Nongzhu's waist. The last one was a tall man in a grey robe. Needless to say, he should be the second master in the world, Wen Lanfeng. She immediately bowed in fear and trepidation and said, Yen Yu greets the three seniors. Don't be so polite. Lu Yanqing glanced around. If Nyoyud was here, it was impossible that he did not hear this. She could not help but ask, is Nyoyud not here? Yen Yu replied, Senior, this junior also does not know where he went. Two of the four great men had come, and the world-famous Mr. Nongzhu was not very polite to her. She was under a lot of pressure. Yan Juexing, Man Hu, and Hu Yuntian walked out of the crowd in front of the Sleeping Spring building. The first two looked at the poem on the wall and looked at each other. Hu Yuntian listened to the zither music drifting from inside and was startled. He said, Why is there such a beautiful song today? Wasn't there before? Yan Juexing asked. It wasn't when I came yesterday. Hu Yuntian shook his head, and then waved his hand and said, Come, let's go in and have a look. As soon as the three of them stepped into the building, they were immediately surrounded by a few women. Yan Juexing was not interested in these women, and did not even bother to look at them. He looked around the layout of the building. The first floor was the lobby to welcome guests, and there was nothing worth seeing. The turtle slave led the three of them to the second floor, where the zither music and singing were drifting from, and immediately saw a hall full of guests. Hee hee. Yesterday, we were all hiding in our rooms to listen to the birds. Why are there so many people sitting in the hall today? Hu Yuntian laughed and said. When his gaze fell on the amorous woman in the middle of the hall, he suddenly could not laugh anymore, and his eyes almost popped out of their sockets. The central hall on the second floor was usually used for singing, dancing, and music performances. At this moment, there was a half-meter-high round table in the middle of the hall, and on it was a red velvet carpet. A charming woman wrapped in red gauze sat on the top of the table, playing the zither and singing softly. The red gauze could not cover the two exposed snow-white and round thighs, and with the red velvet carpet, her snow-white skin was even more conspicuous. The visual difference in color made people's blood boil. The woman's watery and seductive eyes wandered from time to time. It could be said that she was overflowing with charm, and the group of guests almost drooled. The turtle slave who led the three of them up found an empty seat in the middle of the hall, and raised his hand to guide the three of them. Three honored guests, please follow me. Who would have thought that Hu Yuntian would grab his lapel? His eyes would not let go of the charming woman, but his mouth would ask the turtle slave, what a flirtatious beauty, why didn't I see her yesterday, what is her name? The turtle slave did not dare to offend the guests, and could only awkwardly smile. She came to the Sleeping Spring building yesterday, and only went on stage today to perform. Her name is Yi-kun. Yi-kun. Hu Yuntian laughed mischievously, and his hand that was grabbing the lapel loosened. The three of them followed the turtle slave to a table near the periphery. When Hu Yuntian saw that it was too far from the center, he immediately became unhappy, and said in a deep voice, I want a seat near the front, quickly arrange it. Chapter 621. Yan Juexing and Man Who glanced at each other. It seemed that this Hu Yuntian relied on his father's support to do similar things. He did it quite quickly. The tortoise slave was speechless. The Cloud Palace's third young master was not someone he could provoke, but the front seats were already full. He couldn't just drive them away. What's more, those who could come here to throw money, which one of them did not have a bit of background? Who could he provoke? He immediately said with a sullen face, Senior Hu, the front seats are full. Hu Yuntian's face sank. He was used to being domineering. The number of people who dared to provoke him could be counted on one hand. Now, a little tortoise slave dared not give him face. He stared coldly at the tortoise slave, and his body faintly emitted a murderous aura. The people in the hall suddenly felt the murderous aura. They all suddenly woke up and turned their heads to look. Those who could spend 100,000 high-grade spirit stones to sit here and play had some knowledge. They recognized who it was at a glance. Hu Changsho's son was making trouble, but no one present dared to say anything. But the Enchantress of Hundred Charm was still calmly playing the zither and singing, "Brother Hu." Man Hu said from the side, "He can't make the decision, why do you make things difficult for him?" He glanced around and said, "This is cornucopia's territory. Even if you don't give Senior no face, it's not good to make Senior Yin lose face." Hu Yuntian glanced at him and restrained his murderous aura. He snorted coldly and sat down in an empty seat. Man Hu and Yan Juixing also sat down. The tortoise slave repeatedly thanked and quickly left. After a while, he brought 3 girls to accompany the guests. The food and wine on the table were all served. Although the 3 girls flattered, the 3 guests did not seem to have much interest in them. Their eyes were focused on the Enchantress of Hundred Charm who was playing the zither and singing in the center of the hall. In fact, it was not only this table. The girls accompanying the guests at the other tables were also treated coldly. The Enchantress of Hundred Charm undoubtedly became the top courtesan at the scene, stealing the limelight of the girls from the spring slumber brothel. Even Man Hu, who was not very interested in women, could not help but secretly praise this woman's charm. Her temptation to men was too great. He turned his head to look at Yan Juixing, only to find that his eyes were flickering as he stared at the singer, as if he was thinking about something. He couldn't help but secretly transmit his voice, "What's wrong?" Yan Juixing replied, "I've seen this woman before in the 100 Flowers Valley. She's the former palace master of the Enchantment Palace. Her name is Hundred Charm Enchantress. Yi Kun seems to be her real name." Barbarian Tiger was flabbergasted, the current sect master of Pink's sect. Why would she show her face here? Is she tired of living? I don't know. I don't think many people here know her. Yan Juixing squinted his eyes and said, "But there are rumors that she is Yu Qianqiu's mistress." Man Hu slightly nodded his head. He glanced at Hu Yuntian and continued to transmit his voice, "I'm afraid this guy doesn't have any good intentions in bringing us here. His previous actions might have been intentional. Although I managed to persuade him, he might take the opportunity to cause trouble later." Yan Juixing asked with some confusion, "Isn't he afraid of breaking the rules of cornucopia by making trouble here? Besides, this place is related to Niu Yud. Would he dare to offend Niu Yud? Rules are set by people. They can restrain most people, but Yin Baikong's rules can't restrain people like us." Man Hu said worriedly, "I suspect that he's making trouble to lure Niu Yud out and let you meet him. I'm afraid there's a backup plan. Hu Changsho invited Master, and he invited us here. I'm afraid the father and son have already discussed how to deal with it. We have to be careful." Yan Juixing nodded his head slightly. He glanced at Hu Yuntian coldly, and a trace of killing intent flashed in his eyes. When the song, "Laughing at the World of Mortals," ended, there was a continuous burst of cheers in the hall. The Enchantress of Hundred Charms slowly stood up, bowed to the audience, and said with an enchanting smile, "Thank you, everyone, for coming to support me. Let's call it a day. I'll sing for everyone tomorrow." After saying that, she walked down the stage, intending to leave. Not to mention her seductive posture, her hot and seductive figure was even more eye-catching. The crowd booed. Hu Yuntian stood up and shouted, "Wait." His figure flashed and blocked in front of Hundred Charm Enchantress. His eyes unscrupulously swept up and down her body. He laughed and said, "It's a waste to use such beauty to sing. It's better to come with me." He raised his hand and grabbed her arm. Hundred Charm Enchantress's body seemed to inadvertently move slightly to the side, causing Hu Yuntian's hand to grab empty air. She giggled and said, "Even if I don't sing, I can't sell my body." The spectators sitting in a circle all shook their heads and thought it was a pity. Since this woman was fancied by Hu Yuntian, it would be difficult for her to get away. "I'm not asking you to sell your body. I'm just asking you to come with me." Hu Yuntian reached out to touch her face. 100 Charm Enchantress giggled and avoided it. She asked, "Why should I go with you?" Hu Yuntian laughed and said, "As long as you come with me, I can guarantee that you'll never be able to enjoy yourself for the rest of your life. You won't have to sing anymore. That won't do. I don't want to be someone's mistress. I prefer to earn my own living." 100 Charm Enchantress took 2 steps back and slightly bowed. She didn't want to argue with him anymore. Her figure flashed and she appeared outside the circle, walking toward a long corridor. "That's not up to you." Hu Yuntian's face darkened. He teleported again and stopped her. He sneered and said, "Today, you'll have to go with me whether you want to or not. I advise you to be sensible. Don't make me use force on a delicate beauty like you. Could it be that honored guest doesn't know that this is Master Yan's Spring Slumber Tower?" 100 Charm Enchantress reminded him with a smile. "It's because I'm giving Master Yan face that I'm being polite to you. Otherwise, why would I be so long-winded with you?" Hu Yuntian said in a deep voice, "I'll give you one last chance. Just obediently come with me. Don't force me to make a move. Honored guest, you're making things difficult for me. I only sell my skills, not my body. Goodbye." 100 Charm Enchantress wore a faint smile on her face and walked past him. "You still want to leave now?" Hu Yuntian coldly snorted. He quickly grabbed the other party's half-naked shoulder with one hand. In the end, he found that he grabbed nothing. The person in front of him was actually an illusion. The person in front of him was already several meters away. They started to make a move. The group of people clicked their tongues. They thought that there was going to be a good show to watch. They didn't know if the person behind the Spring Slumber Tower would appear. Yan Zhuixing and Man Who looked at each other and revealed an expression as if they had expected it. This guy really wanted to cause trouble. Hu Yuntian made a sound of surprise. His cultivation level was obviously higher than the other parties. He didn't expect that he would fail. He teleported again and stretched out his hand to grab. In the end, he found that he still grabbed nothing. It was still an illusion. This time, he was a little angry. His figure flashed again and again as he chased after the other party's figures. Peng peng, sounds continued. Holes appeared on both sides of the wall. In the end, he found that the other party's figures were getting more and more. The illusions almost filled half the corridor. It was hard to tell which one was real and which one was fake. The onlookers were in an uproar. They didn't expect that a girl who sang in the Spring Slumber Tower would have such a brilliant body technique. In the backyard of the Spring Slumber Tower, Lu Yanqing and Yan Yu were chatting. The two girls would laugh from time to time. When Lan Feng stood aside and seemed to be eavesdropping on the conversation between the two girls. From time to time, a smile appeared on his face. It seemed that he enjoyed this feeling. Nongzhu, on the other hand, was wandering around the yard with her hands behind her back. Her expression was not very good. The sudden sound of fighting in the Spring Slumber Tower startled the four of them. They all looked back at the same time. At this moment, a pimp quickly ran in. He glanced at the other three and then hurriedly reported to Yan Yu, "Boss, Hu Yuntian from the Cloud Palace has taken a fancy to Miss Yi Kun. He wants to take her away." However, Miss Yi insisted on selling her skills and not her body. As a result, she angered Hu Yuntian. The two of them have already started fighting. "Boss, go and have a look. Hu Changshou's son is really becoming more and more promising. He actually came to the brothel to steal someone." Nongzhu sneered. "Yi Kun." Lu Yanqing turned around and asked Yan Yu, "Is she the one who sings in the Spring Slumber Tower?" "Yes." Yan Yu bowed to them and said, "Seniors, please wait a moment. I'll go and have a look." "I'll go with you." Lu Yanqing said. She already had a good impression of Yi Kun when she heard that she insisted on selling her skills and not her body. In addition, she was good at playing the zither. She wanted to get to know her. Yan Yu was happy to hear that. With Lu Yanqing accompanying her, there was really no need to be afraid of the people from the Cloud Palace. "Let me go," Wen Lanfeng said. He frowned and said, "That kind of place is not suitable for you. I'll go and have a look." Although he did not want to go to a place like the Spring Slumber Tower, he was even more unwilling to let Lu Yanqing go. As soon as he finished speaking, he disappeared in place. Hu Yuntian tried to catch her, but he found that he could not catch her. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, he became angry out of shame. It was true that he liked women, but he was not the kind of person who was blinded by lust. The reason why he did this, as man who expected, was to lure Niu Yud out to see Yan Juixing. With his identity, a woman was a small matter, but losing the face of the Cloud Palace was a big matter. For a moment, he actually had a murderous intent and was ready to destroy the flower. "Hey! Did you notice that this woman's movement technique is a bit like the South Sea Purple Bamboo Forest's Mr. Nongju's great art of transposition?" Someone curiously said. Man who slightly shook his head. He had seen Ziyi's great art of transposition at the sword drawing conference. Although it was a bit similar to this woman's, this movement technique was much worse than the great art of transposition. Yan Juixing said, "This should be the phantom great art of the former Phantom Palace." When Man Who nodded in agreement, he suddenly said, "Hu Yuntian is going to kill." Beauty of 100 Charm naturally felt it. She suddenly panicked a little. With the opponent's ability, once he started to fight with her, she was afraid that this little movement technique would not be able to stop him. Now she was a little regretful. She did not expect that with Niu Yud's support in the Sleeping Spring building, there was still someone who dared to use force. If she had known this earlier, she would not have shown up. Just when she was thinking about where to escape, there was a sudden uproar in the lobby, and then it became abnormally quiet. Someone indifferently said, "Hu Changsho's son is really more and more promising. He actually came to the brothel to kidnap a woman." Wen Lanfeng's long hair was draped over his shoulders. He stood with his hands behind his back. No one knew when he appeared in front of the entrance of the long corridor. He directly borrowed Nongju's words. Chapter 622. Temptress was overjoyed when she saw this person. Could this person be Niu Yud? Hu Yuntian immediately stopped when he saw this person. His expression was really complicated. How did he attract this great god? He quickly walked over and saluted. Junior Hu Yuntian greets Senior Wen. He had no choice but to admit defeat. This person could even deal with his father, so dealing with him was a piece of cake. At this time, Yan Yu also quickly rushed over and cupped her hands to Wen Lanfeng. "Senior Wen." Wen Lanfeng ignored Hu Yuntian and slightly nodded to Yan Yu. Yan Yu quickly walked over to Temptress and looked her up and down. "Are you alright?" Temptress shook her head. Fortunately, the Phantom Grand technique passed down from generation to generation in Magic Illusion Palace was still useful. Otherwise, she would have suffered some losses. Yan Yu saw that she was fine and hurriedly said, "Quickly thank Senior Wen Lanfeng. He is the world's second strongest Wen Lanfeng." The Enchantress of 100 Charm was startled. She hurriedly bowed and said, "Thank you, Senior Wen." In her heart, she was hesitating whether she should inquire about Yu Qianqiu or not. Wen Lanfeng just glanced at her indifferently and then stared at Hu Yuntian. "If you dare to cause trouble again, tell Hu Changshu to be ready to collect your corpse." He left a cold snort and disappeared. Hu Yuntian stood there with an awkward expression. There was no reason for him to lose face today. Yan Juixing and Man who were secretly amused. This guy didn't lure Niu Yud out, but he lured Wen Lanfeng out. He was really unlucky to have shot himself in the foot. The crowd didn't dare to make a noise until Wen Lanfeng left. They couldn't help but whisper to each other. They looked at Yen Yu with eyes full of awe. Looking at what happened just now, it was obvious that Yen Yu asked Wen Lanfeng to come forward. Heavens! This woman is really not simple. She can actually ask Wen Lanfeng to stand up for her. In an instant, the Sleeping Spring Mansion's weight in everyone's heart rose to another level. Who would have thought that apart from Niu Yud, there would also be Wen Lanfeng supporting them? Together with Yin Bai Kong, that would make 3 late-stage soul formation experts. Hu Yuntian's expression darkened as he stared at Yen Yu with a venomous gaze. He smiled coldly and said, "Headmaster Yen truly lives up to your reputation. This Hu has learned a lot today. If there is a chance, I will come back to support you." After he said that, he swung his arm and left. Yen Yu couldn't help but bitterly smile. No matter how she tried to explain this matter, it was useless. Today, the enmity between her and Hu Yuntian had been sown. After Hu Yuntian left, Yen Juexing and Man Hu also stood up and left. Before leaving, Yen Juexing took a deep look at Yen Yu and memorized her appearance. The reason why he agreed to Hu Yuntian's request was that he wanted to meet this head Yen who was on good terms with Niu Yud. Perhaps he would be useful in the future. It should be known that Niu Yud had caused him a lot of trouble. Niu Yud had almost deprived him of the freedom to walk freely in the cultivation world. Many people were eyeing him covetously. What happened here spread in cornucopia that day. Wen Lanfeng actually came forward to support Spring Slumber Loft. Spring Slumber Loft's reputation skyrocketed again. Somewhere under a big tree in the primeval forest outside cornucopia, Yu Qianqiu sat there in a daze for a long time. No one knew what he was thinking. It wasn't until he smelled a strong fragrance of meat that he came back to his senses. He pulled away a pile of fire and pulled out a lump of burnt soil from the ground. Breaking open the soil, a white roasted pheasant was revealed. Waving the elegant fragrance in the air, he immediately grabbed the pheasant and wolfed it down. Yin Bai Kong invited him to go to the immortal world again. Although he couldn't go to the immortal world, he still had a way to spend some time to roast a pheasant. Moreover, his skill was exquisite, so any kind of method would do. After fooling around for half a day, he ate and drank to his heart's content. He wiped away the grease at the corner of his mouth, rubbed his stomach and sighed. Life. There's still a long way to go. He patted his buttocks and sighed. On the God of Wealth Peak, Yin Bai Kong welcomed him with a big smile. He cupped his fists and said, "Brother Niu, you're indeed punctual." His worried heart was finally at ease. His gaze inadvertently fell on Yu Qianqiu's head and he was startled. Yu Qianqiu wanted to say a few polite words, but after seeing Yin Bai Kong's reaction, he subconsciously touched his head. There was something as soft as cotton. He casually took it down to take a look. It was actually a brown pheasant feather. Damn it! He must have gotten it when he was slaughtering the pheasant. Yu Qianqiu casually tossed it away and the wind blew it away. He laughed and said, "It's just a chicken feather." He then took out a storage bag and handed it to Yin Bai Kong. "There are 25,000 limit-breaking pills in here, you can count them." Yin Bai Kong was pondering about the problem of the immortal world's chicken feather when he was suddenly pulled back to reality by the 25,000. He injected his divine sense into the bag and saw that there were indeed 25,000 limit-breaking pills. He couldn't help but let out a breath of cold air. This bag was worth 50 billion high-grade spirit stones. He asked in confusion, "Brother Niu, what do you mean?" "To be honest, you're only buying 5,000 at a time. It's too risky for me to travel back and forth between the immortal world and the mortal world." Yu Qianqiu pointed at the storage bag in his hand and said, "Of the 25,000, 5,000 were bought by you. As for the remaining 20,000 pills, I used my good reputation to get them on credit. I promised to give them the money within 2 days. Can you sell them all within 2 days? If not, I'll return the goods to them first. Otherwise, it'll ruin my good reputation. Ian Baikong was stunned for a while, then his old face blossomed into a smile. Not to mention 2 days, he could even sell them all in 1 day. Currently, the limit-breaking pills were in short supply in the market. Not to mention 20,000, he could even sell 100,000. Although none of the 300 countries' powers were richer than his World Commerce Association, it was not a problem for each of them to take out 1 billion to buy the limit-breaking pills. Pooling together, they would have 300 billion. These 20,000 pills were only a few tens of billions. Most importantly, he had to pay before taking the goods. He was always on tenterhooks and taking risks. Now, all the goods were in his hands. He didn't have to worry about not being able to sell them. What was there to worry about? This was simply giving him money. Within 1 day. Ian Baikong passionately raised a finger and said solemnly, I'll deliver the 24 billion high-grade spirit stones to Brother Nyo on time. If you can't sell them, my World Commerce Association will think of a way to pay for them. It will not affect Brother Nyo's reputation in the immortal world. Yu Qianqiu nodded seriously and said, Good, then it's settled. If you go back on your word, don't blame me for being hostile. These words carried a hint of warning. Ian Baikong's eyes flashed and he laughed, Brother Nyo, don't worry. Just come back within 1 day to get the money. Go back to your work. I won't disturb you anymore. Just as Yu Qianqiu turned around, he turned back and said, I found Yu Qianqiu before I came. He's on his way here. He should be able to reach the World Chamber of Commerce in 2 days at most. I've gathered 5,007 treasure pills for him. Brother Ian, you better pay him as soon as possible. I got those things on credit this time. 7 treasure pills are worth 2 million per pill. 5,000 of them are worth 10 billion. Adding the limit-breaking pill, it's a total of 34 billion. Will Brother Ian have any problems with such a large sum? If it's not convenient, you can tell me now so I can deal with it. Ian Baikong thought for a moment. 34 billion. The 5,000 pills that he had previously ordered could be delivered to the buyer, so he was still short of 29 billion. In other words, he had to sell 15,000 pills in 1 day and convert them into 30 billion. Adding the 5 billion, it would be enough. As for the remaining 10,000, he was prepared to hold back. He couldn't put out too much as he had to maintain everyone's desire to buy. Moreover, he had to prepare some for himself. When Nyo Yud's next batch of goods arrived, he would hold back a little more. Brother Nyo, don't worry. I won't hold you up. Ian Baikong smiled and promised, when Yu Qianqiu's 7 treasure pills arrive, I'll hand over the money with him. Go back to your work. Yu Qianqiu nodded in satisfaction and floated down the mountain. Ian Baikong watched him leave and muttered with a cold smile, what credit? Who knows how much these pills are sold for in the immortal world? Then, he shook his head disapprovingly. This wasn't something he should worry about. While Nyo Yud was earning money, he was also giving him a huge profit. There was nothing to be suspicious about. Everyone was earning. He quickly brought Sikong's ultimate move up the mountain and arranged to sell the pills. As soon as Yu Qianqiu landed in the backyard of the Sleeping Spring Loft, he saw Yan Yu and the temptress whispering to each other. He didn't know what they were talking about. When the temptress saw him, she bowed and greeted, Senior Nyo. Yu Qianqiu nodded speechlessly. You're back. Yan Yu greeted. She sounded like a wife waiting for her husband's return. She walked over and said, when you weren't here, Senior Wen Lanfeng, Senior Lu Yanqing, and Mr. Nongzhu came to look for you. They came to look for me. Yu Qianqiu asked suspiciously, "Why are they looking for me?" In his heart, he was guessing if Nongzhu had already revealed his identity. "Please don't ruin my plans." "They didn't say why they were looking for you." Yan Yu looked at the temptress and said, "They helped us solve some problems." Yu Qianqiu followed her gaze and looked at the temptress. He frowned and said, "What's wrong?" Yan Yu told Yu Qianqiu about how Hu Yuntian wanted to steal the 100 Charms beauty. Yu Qianqiu sneered as he listened. His eyes flashed with killing intent as he said, "Hu Changshou's son, Hu Yuntian, is quite courageous. It looks like someone is tired of living." He was really angry. Fortunately, he was not there. Otherwise, no matter what Hu Yuntian wanted to do, he would kill the guy on the spot, no matter whose son he was. There was no room for negotiation in the heart of Yu Qianqiu, so he didn't have so many scruples. Although he didn't want to touch the temptress, he would never allow others to touch her unless she was willing. In that case, he would have nothing to say and would even bless her. In the worst case, the temptress was still his master's wife. Someone dared to flirt with his master's wife. How could he swallow this anger? He couldn't vent his anger without killing him. They were all in the cultivation world. It was impossible to survive by talking things out. Chapter 623. Yan Yu and Temptress looked at each other quietly and clicked their tongues. They guessed that Niu Yud was angered by Hu Yuntian causing trouble in his territory. Yu Qianqiu let out a sigh of relief and stared at Temptress. "Don't go out and show your face anymore. I just got reliable news that the person you're looking for should come to Cornucopia in 2 days." "Really?" Temptress couldn't help but ask, looking a little surprised. "Yu Qianqiu will come to Cornucopia?" Yan Yu also couldn't help but ask. To be honest, she was also curious about Yu Qianqiu, who claimed to be the #1 expert below the soul formation stage. This person's cultivation was not high, but he was quite capable. He was just a tribulation passing stage cultivator, but he had stirred up the entire cultivation world. He was both arrogant and talented, so it was a pity not to meet him. Yu Qianqiu didn't reply, just nodded noncommittally, then turned and walked towards the bungalow. Yan Yu shouted behind him, "Mr. Nongzhu said to find them at Buy One countries when families shop after you arrive." "Got it." Yu Qianqiu didn't look back. He made up his mind to wait until he got the money, so as not to complicate matters. In front of Treasure Tower, as soon as the new notice board was put up, the whole cornucopia immediately boiled over. The World Chamber of Commerce would sell 15,000 limit-breaking pills in one go, and the original order of 5,000 would be delivered today. The most exciting thing was that, in order to reflect fairness and stimulate the activity of cornucopia, the World Chamber of Commerce would sell 500 shares of the pills to itinerant cultivators with no background. However, the purchase quantity was limited. Each itinerant cultivator could only buy one, and it was first come, first served. As long as an itinerant cultivator could come up with enough spirit stones, as long as they lined up, they could buy one with the cornucopia access token. Repeat purchases were not allowed. It was also stated that disciples of various sects were not allowed to buy, and this opportunity was limited to itinerant cultivators. The conditions seemed harsh, but they respected reality. It should be known that there were not many rogue cultivators who could take out 2 million upper-grade spirit stones. It was already a great kindness for them to be able to take out 500 upper-grade spirit stones. The Ice Palace and Cloud Palace both had soul formation final stage cultivators behind them, and they only managed to get 100 of them last time. Not long after the sign was put up, the front of the treasure house was immediately overcrowded. Some rogue cultivators with some savings tried to squeeze in, not for anything else but to buy a pill to quickly improve their cultivation. This kind of opportunity was not easy to come by. Usually, even if one had a lot of spirit stones, even if one could absorb enough spiritual qi, it would still take a long time to slowly refine it. Moreover, it might not be able to smoothly improve one's cultivation. However, things were different with the limit-breaking pill. As long as he had enough spirit stones, raising his cultivation by one level was no longer a dream. Itinerant cultivators who want to buy the restriction-breaking pill, line up from the right side door. Don't block the normal transactions of the treasure tower. Line up properly. If you don't have enough money, don't go in and join in the fun. You are not allowed to cut the line. Otherwise, you will be killed. Mu Lianqiu shouted and swept his sharp gaze across the chaotic crowd, immediately suppressing those who wanted to squeeze in to take a look. Mu Lianqiu led the law enforcement team of the cornucopia, and there were more than a dozen Tribulation Transcendence cultivators standing on both sides to maintain order. All of them stared at the crowd covetously. The chaotic and crowded crowd quickly became orderly under the strong pressure. Those who wanted to fish in troubled waters did not have enough money. They just wanted to go in and see who had bought the spirit pills so that they could remember who it was so that they could snatch it in the future. In the end, they were frightened by Mu Lianqiu's kill and immediately scattered in a large group. Many cultivators stood on both sides of the street and sighed as they watched the buying line. It seemed that there were less than 200 people in the queue who could take out 2 million. Obviously, everyone still had a chance to buy it. Unfortunately, although 2 million was just a drop in the bucket for those big forces, it was an astronomical figure for the rogue cultivators. The crowd of onlookers looked at the long queue with complicated expressions. Some people were envious, some were excited, some were depressed, and some were memorizing the people who went in to buy the spirit pill with flickering eyes. There were also the disciples of the various sects who had the money but had no chance to buy it because they had to buy it with an access token. As soon as the token was taken out, some simple information inside was enough to expose their identity. When they applied for an access token in the past, no one thought that there would be such a day. Brother Wang, as long as you have money, there is still a chance to buy it. Why don't you and I pool our money to buy one? What do you think? Someone in the crowd said. Another person sneered and replied, so what if we pool our money? There is only one limit-breaking pill. Should I give it to you or you? There is a lot of room for the limit-breaking pill to rise in value. Even if it is not easy to distribute between us, we can make a big profit by selling it, the first person said affirmatively. The eyes of the person who was called Brother Wang lit up when he heard that and immediately pulled him out of the crowd. After a while, the two of them squeezed in again, and the latter held a storage bag and lined up at the end of the line. The two of them did not avoid the crowd when they spoke, so their words were heard by the people around them. The crowd immediately burst into an uproar as everyone looked for suitable partners to pool their money. What a joke! If they did not take such easy money, there would be something wrong with their brains. The room for the spirit pill to rise in value was not just a little bit. Even a little bit of increase would be calculated in the tens of thousands of superior-grade spirit stones, right? As itinerant cultivators, it was difficult to earn hundreds of superior-grade spirit stones on normal days. If they could earn tens of thousands of superior-grade spirit stones in one go, wouldn't they be rich? It did not take long for the line of 500 people to be formed. There were men and women, and all of them stood in the line excitedly. In the end, the number of people in the line far exceeded 500, but there were still people joining in. Moreover, there were still many people flocking over after hearing the news. What was surprising was that the side door on the left of the treasure tower was open for the various sects to purchase limit-breaking pills in large quantities. However, it was deserted, and no one came to visit. This was the complete opposite of the heated scene from the last time when the major sects were fighting over the limit-breaking pills. It was very strange. In the treasure tower, Jing Yuankong stood in front of the window and stared at the activity below. He let out a sigh. He could not help but admire his master's business methods. In fact, the two people downstairs were two people he had sent out as per his master's orders. The two unfamiliar disciples of the World Chamber of Commerce had teamed up to put on a show. He had arranged several pairs of such people. He had previously received a secret report that the World Chamber of Commerce's unbridled accumulation of wealth had made the various lords very dissatisfied. Therefore, the various lords had gathered together to conspire, preparing to join forces to pressure Ian Baikong to lower the price of the limit-breaking pills. It was said that even Bing Qingzi and Hu Changshu were moved. After all, everyone wanted to buy enough limit-breaking pills. Although the price of the limit-breaking pills far exceeded 2 million per pill, they could not resist buying them in large quantities. That was a very large sum. When Jing Yuankong, who was in charge of the Cornucopia Guild, received the news, he was shocked and immediately went to God of Wealth Peak to report the situation to his master. When Ian Baikong heard the news, he indifferently faced the rolling sea of clouds and let out a disdainful snort, saying, "If you think you can force me to yield with just this tactic of joining forces to pressure me, then there would not be today's World Chamber of Commerce. To dare show off such insignificant tricks in front of me, you are looking down on me, Ian Baikong." Humph. As long as there are good things in hand, there is nothing that I, Ian Baikong, cannot sell. Yuan Kong immediately arranged this. After a series of detailed instructions, Jing Yuan Kong inwardly praised. Ian Baikong's plan was very simple, that was to create hype and raise the price of the limit-breaking pills. Although there were not many loose cultivators in the cultivation world who were rich, there were many of them. One person could not come up with a large amount of money, but when a few grains of sand gathered together, their combined financial strength was not a small amount. As long as the price of the limit-breaking pills was raised, it would make people feel that there was a huge profit to be made from the limit-breaking pills. Then, all the loose cultivators in the world would flock over. In terms of cultivation, Ian Baikong could not be ranked first in the cultivation world. However, Ian Baikong could easily use this kind of business method to suppress others. There was probably no one in the cultivation world who could surpass him. Because of this, many people had suffered losses in his hands. Many people called him an old fox behind his back, but there was nothing they could do about it. It was clear that Ian Baikong was not lucky to be able to support such a large world chamber of commerce in the cultivation world. Once the 500 limit-breaking pills were sold, it was guaranteed that those who wanted to join forces to pressure him would leave on bad terms. If you don't buy it, then someone else will. It's not like you can't sell it, so lowering the price was impossible. Jing Yuankong stood in front of the window with his arms crossed. Hurried footsteps came from the stairs behind him. A disciple came behind him and saluted, "Master, all 500 limit-breaking pills have been sold in less than 2 hours." Jing Yuankong gazed at the dispersing crowd with dejected expressions, and the corners of his mouth curled up into a smile. "Make the arrangements immediately. It's best if everyone in Cornucopia knows about it. Keep it a secret." "Yes, disciple will make the arrangements immediately." The disciple turned and left. About an hour later, a shocking piece of news came out of the Cornucopia. 2 rogue cultivators who had bought a limit-breaking pill together had sold the limit-breaking pill right away. The original price of a limit-breaking pill was 2 million high-grade spirit stones, but it was sold for 2.5 million high-grade spirit stones. The cultivators who pooled their money to buy the limit-breaking pill were all overjoyed. They had earned 500,000 high-grade spirit stones in a short time. To them, that was money that they had to spend many years to earn. Just as the rogue cultivators who bought the limit-breaking pill were in high spirits, another piece of news came that made them ecstatic. 2 rogue cultivators rented a stall to sell the limit-breaking pill. The price was 3 million high-grade spirit stones, but it was sold in less than an hour. This was not an unfounded rumor. Many people saw it with their own eyes. Oh my God! The price had risen by another 500,000 high-grade spirit stones. Just when the itinerant cultivators were overjoyed, they heard that another limit-breaking pill had been sold for 3 million high-grade spirit stones. This was the third limit-breaking pill that had been sold at such a high price. The rogue cultivators who pooled their money but failed to buy the limit-breaking pill were so frustrated that they almost vomited blood. Chapter 624. However, at this time, Treasure Tower made a new announcement. Due to the unexpected number of wandering cultivators buying the limit-breaking pills, World Commerce had decided that if there were any leftovers from the 15,000 limit-breaking pills sold today within half a day, all wandering cultivators in the world would have the right to buy them. There was no limit to the number of people who could buy them, and they could buy them repeatedly until they were all sold out. Once this news was announced, the vexed wandering cultivators who wanted to vomit blood immediately became spirited and rushed outside Treasure Tower to wait. This time, they wouldn't miss this opportunity. If there really were any limit-breaking pills left, they had to line up in front. Jing Yuankong looked at the crowd gathered below Treasure Tower. This proved that his previous arrangements were effective. He relaxed and walked away from the window with a smile. On the top floor of the Blue Palace, Pei Fong's expression was unsettled. There had originally been dozens of lords gathered in the hall, but now there were less than 10 left. This time, he was the one who had contacted the various countries to pressure world commerce. More than 200 lords from various countries had reached an agreement not long ago, but now it had all become empty words. Previously, everyone had been optimistic that no matter how powerful world commerce was, they wouldn't be able to withstand the pressure from the various countries. It would be hard for Yin Baikong not to lower the price. However, just as they were about to pressure world commerce, Yin Baikong had suddenly made a fuss over the wandering cultivators. This caught the various lords unprepared and completely shattered everyone's hopes. Their tightly clenched fists had lost their target. If it was a normal power, everyone might have used force in this situation. No matter how reasonable you were, we would still force you to sell at a low price. What could you do? Who told you to be so incompetent? However, the world commerce led by Yin Baikong wasn't a normal power. In addition, Yin Baikong himself was a late-stage soul transformation expert. Once he forced the other party into a dead end, it would be very painful to bite. With a single order from him, the various countries would fall into chaos and not many would be able to escape. Taking 10,000 steps back, Bing Qingzi and Hu Changshu were in an alliance with Yin Baikong. If they were reasonable, they would definitely fight for their own benefits and work together with everyone else to pressure Yin Baikong. This reasoning was that if you didn't lower the price when you couldn't sell it, you would obviously take the opportunity to extort money from everyone when you saw that everyone was determined to buy it. Although it was also a fallacious reason, it was still a far-fetched one. But now, it wasn't that he couldn't sell it. Why should he lower the price? If you don't want to buy it, I'll sell it to someone else. It's fine as long as someone is willing to buy it. This is a very normal thing. With this reasoning, Bing Qingzi and Hu Changshu didn't get angry. After all, they couldn't possibly join forces with others to deal with their own allies. If they did that, not only would Yin Baikong fall out with them, who would dare to stand with them in the future? They were afraid that the next unlucky ones in the cultivation world would be the two of them. Someone didn't just want to deal with Yin Baikong. Once the power balance was broken, the weaker side would definitely suffer. Brother Pei, since everyone has left, there's no point for us to stay. If we wait any longer, I'm afraid we won't have a share of the limit-breaking pill. I will leave now. Yunantian cupped his hands to the rest of the people and left. Pei Fong said in a low voice, "What's the rush? If you can't buy it this time, there will be a next time." Hearing this, Yunantian paused and said with his back facing them, "I guess it is not easy to collect the herbs needed to refine the limit-breaking Dan. Do you think that the limit-breaking Dan can be sold without limit? Therefore, there is no harm in buying more in advance. We can talk about it next time." After saying this, he left. "Look." Pei Fong's fat face trembled as he pointed at the direction Yunantian left. He looked at Chi Jojuan and Ouyangde and said, "It is because everyone has the same idea that we let Yin Baikong, that old fox, get his way. If we want to blame something, we can only blame ourselves for not being united." After he finished speaking, other than the 3 late spirit-severing cultivators, the other lords also looked at each other and left. This made Pei Fong tremble with anger. Ouyang sighed and said, "Are we not going to buy it this time? Which one of you is willing? I'm afraid that if we don't buy it, Yin Baikong will be even happier. He is not willing to sell the limit-breaking Dan to us. Even without the 3 of us, he can still earn his money. Buy it, we can't let that old fox's scheme succeed." Pei Fong gnashed his teeth and his face turned black. He couldn't understand why every time he tried to deal with Yin Baikong, it was easily resolved by him. Was it because he was useless, or was the other party more powerful? The side door on the left of the treasure tower was still empty 4 hours ago, but after the new notice was posted, it immediately became popular again. Disciples representing various forces came in and out, the doorstep was almost broken. 4 hours later, a notice was hung on the door. "Today's 15,000 limit-breaking Dan has been sold out, next time we'll be notified." The rogue cultivators on the street were depressed. Why didn't they see anyone buy it before, but in the blink of an eye, it was sold out. None of them knew that they had been played by Yin Baikong, and that they had been ruthlessly used. On the upper floor of the Wen clan's shop, Wen Lanfeng dismissed the Wen clan disciple who came to report the news and turned to look at Nongzhu and Lu Yanqing. "This matter is very obvious. Fatty Pei wants to mess with Yin Baikong in one go. This is not the first time." Nongzhu shook her head and said, "But Yin Baikong is indeed Yin Baikong. Fatty Pei is still lacking if he wants to spar with him." Lu Yanqing giggled and said, "No matter how strong Yin Baikong is, when he meets you, Nongzhu, he will still be defeated. Compared to you, he is still lacking." "You can't say that." Nongzhu waved her hand and sighed, "I know my own capabilities, I'm just a fox using the tiger's might, I'm still far from him. Yin Baikong is not afraid of me, but by Changchun, so he tolerates everything. Everyone knows this, you don't have to flatter me. Limit-breaking Dan, I wanted to buy some, but..." When Lanfeng looked at Nongzhu and said, "Nongzhu, you said you would help me get a batch of limit-breaking Dan for free, you have to keep your word. There are a bunch of people in the Wen clan who are counting on me, and I'm counting on you. Seriously, can you really get the limit-breaking Dan from Nyoyud for free?" Nongzhu rolled her eyes and said, "Don't worry about it. I have a good relationship with Nyoyud, since it's a pill that can be sold in large quantities, he will definitely give it to me if I ask him for a batch." "That's good." When Lanfeng heaved a sigh of relief, in order to protect the Wen clan in the future, even if he had no intention of getting involved, he had to fight for it. "Yes. I believe Nongzhu. It shouldn't be a problem for him to ask Nyoyud for some limit-breaking Dan." Lu Yanqing hid behind the green veil and smiled sweetly, then said seriously, "I wanted to buy some for research, but Lingfang Valley's income is not wide, it can't be compared to other forces. Since there's someone who doesn't need money, I won't waste my money. Nongzhu, you can't be biased, you have to give me a batch for free too." Because she knew the background of Nyoyud and Nongzhu, there was a hint of ridicule in her words. Nongzhu glared at her fiercely. Mo Xiaojun told him about what happened in Treasure Tower, leaving Yu Qianqiu stunned for a long time. Then he asked for some details. Only then did he understand that in this short period of half a day, Yin Baikong had been secretly competing with someone. It was obvious that someone was trying to stop Yin Baikong from selling the limit-breaking Dan. Looking at the situation, it seemed that the various countries had joined forces, but this was also reasonable. After coming back to his senses, he couldn't help but admire Yin Baikong. Perhaps anyone could think of a way, but to be able to counterattack in such a short period of time, and in such an orderly manner, defeating the opponent's plot in one fell swoop, this was not something an ordinary person could do. Well done. Yu Qianqiu smacked his lips as he reminisced, looked at Imo Xiaojun, who had a face full of confusion, and shook his head slightly. Those who had not experienced this level could only see the surface of the good and bad business, they could not taste the turbulence behind the surface. He had the experience of being a superior in his previous life, so he could naturally see that Yin Baikong had taken a stroll on the edge of the cliff. It was very thrilling. At this time, Sikong Ju arrived again, cupped his hands and said, "Senior Niu, my master invites you." There was no need to mention how gloomy he was. Now that he had become an errand boy, he even had to run to the brothel. Actually, even he did not know the story behind today's sale of the limit-breaking Dan. Yin Baikong did not tell him, only Jing Yuankong and the disciples under him knew. Yin Baikong had his own ideas about which disciple should be in charge of which business. He would not let a disciple easily interfere with another party's business. Yu Qianqiu laughed. He knew that Yin Baikong was going to fulfill his promise to pay within a day. He had to admit that in terms of doing business, Yin Baikong's reputation was better than his own, but his own reputation was not bad either. He happily arrived at the God of Wealth Peak, and upon seeing Yin Baikong, he immediately cupped his hands and said, "Brother Yin, I really admire you. You played your hand beautifully today." Yin Baikong was slightly startled. He did not expect this guy to be able to see through the inside story. He shook his head and smiled bitterly. The tree desires peace, but the wind does not cease. I also want to do business honestly, but some people just like to cause trouble. I have no choice but to retaliate. Let's not talk about this anymore. It would be strange if you could do business honestly. Yu Qianqiu smiled but did not say anything. Yin Baikong waved his hand and pointed at the 24 storage bags on the bluestone platform. 24 billion high-grade spirit stones have been paid as scheduled. Brother Niu, please check. Oh my! I've made a fortune. I won't have to sneak around for money anymore. I can do other things with peace of mind. Yu Qianqiu's heart was pounding with anxiety as he put away the storage pouch on the bluestone platform with a smile. Then he looked at Yin Baikong and nodded seriously. Working with Brother Yin is really refreshing. I really did not choose the wrong partner. Haha. Isn't Brother Niu the same? Yin Baikong's mouth was full of flattery, but in his heart, he was thinking. As long as you are happy, there are some things that I have been holding back. After this busy period, it's time to think of a way for you to help me get some things from the immortal world that are beneficial to my cultivation. Chapter 625. Yu Qianqiu smiled. All right. I won't say much, you're busy so I won't disturb you. However, I believe that Yu Qianqiu will arrive at the cornucopia in a few days. I hope that Brother Yin will keep to our previous agreement. Yin Baikong nodded. Of course, Brother Niu can rest assured, the money has already been prepared. Once Yu Qianqiu arrives, we will immediately exchange the goods. Good, you can continue with your work. Yu Qianqiu politely replied and floated down the mountain. Yin Baikong's face was full of smiles as he walked up the mountain, looking around at the beautiful scenery of the world. His mood was very carefree. Standing under the pine tree, Chu Tian's eyes were filled with lofty sentiments as he murmured, "This world, sooner or later, will be mine. Whether it is Wenlanfeng or by Changchun, none of them can stop me." As soon as Yu Qianqiu arrived at the backyard of the Sleeping Spring building, he summoned Yan Yu and the 100 Charms Enchantress to the bungalow. Inside the room, Yu Qianqiu sat at the table and silently ate the fresh fruits on the plate. The two girls looked at each other in blank dismay, not knowing why he called them over. After a while, the fruit plate was half empty. Yu Qianqiu picked up the white handkerchief on the table and wiped his hands clean. Throwing the white handkerchief to the side, he coldly stared at Yan Yu. "I hope you still remember what I said to you before. When are you planning to leave?" Yan Yu bit her lips. "Where do you think I can go after I leave? If there is a powerful force that wants to find me, where can I hide?" The 100 Charms enchantress looked at the two suspiciously, not knowing why Niu Yud wanted Yan Yu to leave. Yu Qianqiu indifferently said, "I'll advise you one last time, are you going to leave or not?" As soon as these words came out, the atmosphere in the room suddenly became heavy. Yan Yu's chest heaved slightly as she stared fixedly at Yu Qianqiu. After a long time, she finally said, "If you take me with you, I'll leave. If you don't, I won't go anywhere." Yu Qianqiu's eyes flickered. Then, he became determined and said in a deep voice, "Don't think that you can threaten me just because you know something about me. It's useless. I can give in to anything, but I won't give in to other people's threats. I have my own things to do, so it's impossible for me to bring you along. You'd better give up." These words were too hurtful to a woman's heart. The Enchantress of Allure, who was also a woman, silently looked at Yan Yu. Seeing a trace of distress flash across her face, she forced a smile and said, "In that case, I won't trouble you. I'll continue to stay in the Sleeping Spring loft. Don't worry, I won't tell anyone about you." Humph. Yu Qianqiu narrowed his eyes and said, "Do you want to be a brothel keeper for the rest of your life? I've already stepped into the cultivation world. Do I have a choice?" Yan Yu chuckled as if she was very happy. She said, "Cornucopia still has some rules. Once I leave it, what will happen to me? A woman with no background, good looks, but low cultivation, walking in the cultivation world will sooner or later become the plaything of God knows how many men. Senior Niu, you're also a man, don't you think so?" Yu Qianqiu didn't answer her. He looked at the Enchantress of Allure with an expressionless face and said, "And you, I advise you to return to the cultivation world of China. Don't think about looking for that Yu Qianqiu again. That guy still has a lot of problems to solve, so he can't help you at the moment. If you're willing, I'll find someone to send you back safely. Thank you for your kindness, Senior. Since I'm already here, I'd better stay and take a look." The Enchantress of Allure bowed slightly and tactfully refused Yu Qianqiu's kindness. Two women who don't know what's good for them. Yu Qianqiu suddenly stood up, leaving a cold snort, and strode out of the door. The footsteps outside the door suddenly disappeared, and then it was quiet inside and outside the room. Yan Yu suddenly raised her head and quickly ran out to the courtyard outside, but she couldn't see Niu Yud's figure anymore. She looked around in a daze, and her body swayed, and she almost couldn't stand. Unbeknownst to her, the Enchantress of 100 Charm had appeared behind her and gently supported her. Yan Yu looked back with a little fear and asked, "Why did he suddenly say that today? Will he never come back?" At this moment, she didn't look like a shrewd boss lady at all. Men are all bad things. If he doesn't come back, then he won't come back. The Enchantress of Allure looked at her again and asked, "Do you care about him a lot?" Yan Yu broke free from her hands and smiled bitterly. "Big Sister Yi, can't he see that I don't want to leave here, and only want to be with him? Since he wants me to leave, why didn't he even give me some words to make me feel assured? Isn't it said that men like to say some sweet words to coax women? Why didn't he even say some perfunctory words to deceive me? Is it because I came from a brothel that he's so disdainful?" The reason why she fell in love with Niu Yud at first sight was because she saw Niu Yud accept Li Chuxiang with her own eyes. Although Li Chuxiang came from a brothel, he tried his best to save her, and didn't look down on brothel women in the slightest. This scene greatly moved Yan Yu, who also wanted to live a normal life as a woman. In addition, Niu Yud's unfathomable cultivation gave her a strong sense of security, and her stubborn heart muddle-headedly cheated. Once the floodgates of love opened, it couldn't be stopped. Otherwise, how could Niu Yud get into her bed so easily? Hearing this, the temptress suddenly burst into laughter. She rubbed her forehead and shook her head. "Little Sister Yan, you're finished." After laughing, she grabbed Yan Yu's hand, and said with a firm look in her eyes, "Trust me, this kind of man. The reason why he's not willing to give you sweet words is because he already has a place for you in his heart. He has to take responsibility for every word he says to you, so he won't easily open his mouth. But then again, if he doesn't have you in his heart, he can leave if he wants to. Why would he come back to say these heartless words to you? There's no need. Really? Yenyu grabbed her hand, eager to confirm. The temptress raised her hand and tapped Yenyu's forehead, and chuckled, "You're lucky to meet a good man. Don't worry. He's cold on the outside, but warm on the inside. He won't leave you alone. What's the use of his heartless words? He's just lying to himself. If he has the ability, he'll never come looking for you. You don't have to worry, just wait for him to come back." Yenyu was slightly stunned, and suddenly burst into laughter. How could she not see this at the beginning, and it was precisely because of this that she was sure to defeat him. Just now, she was just muddle-headed by Nyo Yud's heartless words. It was because she cared too much about him that she panicked. Yenyu bit her lip and murmured, "If you have the ability, don't come looking for me." The temptress looked at Yenyu with some envy. In the primeval forest outside the cornucopia, Yu Qiancho once again appeared at the place where the pheasant was roasted last time. The ashes on the ground were still there, but the bones that were originally thrown there had disappeared. It was estimated that they were taken away by some animals. Yu Qiancho's face was very long. Those two women made him very unhappy, and neither of them was easy to deal with. The temptress's feelings for him were a little ambiguous, and he still had some headaches until now. He tried to avoid it as much as he could. Yenyu. It was a little strange that a woman with a pure body could support such a big brothel. Which normal woman would run a brothel? Yu Qiancho was originally very suspicious, and he dared not reveal his true identity to make arrangements. After meeting the temptress, he wanted to let her take Yenyu to the Huaxia cultivation world to hide first, and ask a reliable escort on the way, such as asking Nongzhu for help. However, these two women had steeled their hearts. "Do whatever you want, I don't care." Yu Qiancho kicked a big tree fiercely twice to vent his displeasure. Suddenly, he looked up at the tree, and saw a huge head poking out of the branches and leaves, staring at him with two big cold eyes. A large brown python flicked its tongue and slid down the tree trunk at high speed. Yu Qiancho was stunned, and he guessed that his two kicks had awakened the sleeping python in the tree. Before the python landed on the ground, it rushed over and wrapped Yu Qiancho with its nearly 10-meter-long body. Then it curled up, trying to strangle its prey. It was not strange to see such a big python in the primitive forest. Yu Qiancho looked up at the python's gradually opening mouth, and said coldly, "Yu Qiancho is back, star flame fire spell." A ball of green flame suddenly exploded, and swallowed both the man and the python. After a while, the green flame disappeared, and Yu Qiancho was unscathed, but there was a pile of ashes on the ground. He did not even bother to look at it, and began to carefully remove the human skin mask on his face. Then he removed the force that suppressed his vocal cords and changed his voice. He loosened the muscles on his face, removed the hairband that bound his hair, put away the bracelet on his wrist, and took off all his clothes. He stood there completely naked, and a stream of water appeared out of thin air, wrapped around him, and quickly washed him. After washing up, he waved his hand, and the stream of water flowed into the dense forest. He took out another set of clothes and changed into it, and his hairstyle was restored to Yu Qiancho's style. He looked like a new person. He looked around, and without hesitation, he quickly flew into the air. He looked at the god of wealth peak in the distance, and in a flash, he flew towards the treasure basin. Not long after, he arrived outside the treasure basin, and landed between the two hanging bridges. He saw many cultivators coming and going on the bridge, which was hidden in the fog. Guan Zhongkai had brought him here once, so he was familiar with the way. He strolled along the hanging bridge and entered. After crossing the hanging bridge, he entered the cave. Yu Qianqiu walked straight into a stone room inside the cave, and saw a few people registering to receive the treasure basin entry jade archive. He was not in a hurry, and stood in line behind them obediently. When it was his turn, he said, "Give me an entry jade archive." Name, school. The cultivator behind the table picked up a jade archive, and asked as he wrote something on it. Yu Qianqiu, no school, a loose cultivator. Yu Qianqiu said plainly. As soon as he said that, the people coming and going in the cave all stopped in their tracks. Even the guards in the cave turned to look at him. The cultivator behind the table raised his head in surprise, and said, "You're Yu Qianqiu." Chapter 626. If I'm not Yu Qianqiu, then who do you think I am? Yu Qianqiu retorted, amused and annoyed at the same time. That's not what I meant. The person behind the table stood up and waved his hand. Just then, a person sitting in the corner of the stone room walked over and smiled. We didn't mean anything else. We just wanted to confirm something. Yu Qianqiu glanced at him. It was the same person whom Guan Zhongkai addressed as senior uncle the last time he came here. He was here to make a fortune, not to cause trouble. Miao Yi nodded and waved his hand. A green flame dragon flew out, illuminating the entire stone room in a dazzling green light. The flame dragon circled around the table, and the table was instantly reduced to ashes. After that, the green flame dragon burrowed into Yu Qianqiu's sleeve and disappeared. Guan Zhongkai's senior uncle's pupils shrank. He couldn't feel any heat from the flame dragon, but it had easily burned a wooden table to ashes. What a powerful technique to control fire. The person who was sitting at the table looked at the ground speechlessly. The crowd in the passageway had gathered and blocked the entrance. Do I need to use any other methods to prove it? Yu Qianqiu tilted his head and asked. I've long heard of the Starflame fire technique. Now that I've seen it for myself, it certainly lives up to its reputation. Guan Zhongkai's senior uncle praised. He then turned to the cultivator holding the jade archive and said, "What are you spacing out for? Hurry up and help Mr. Yu with the jade archive." The cultivator nodded repeatedly. After he had Yu Qianqiu inject some true essence into the archive, he quickly inscribed the incantation on the jade archive. Yu Qianqiu took the jade archive and asked, "How much?" Guan Zhongkai's senior uncle glanced at the crowd outside and smiled. Someone knew that Mr. Yu was coming and has already paid for you. Oh. Yu Qianqiu didn't stand on ceremony. He took the jade archive and left. The crowd outside quickly made way for him to pass. After he was far away, someone asked, "Is he really that butcher Yu Qianqiu?" That's right. After offending so many people, how could he dare to come here instead of hiding? You don't understand. Now that he has Wanlongfeng's support, there's nothing to be afraid of. TSK. As the #1 expert below the soul formation stage, he can be considered a well-known figure in the cultivation world. Guan Zhongkai's martial uncle shouted at the crowd, "Disperse, don't block the way and hinder others from entering." After the crowd dispersed, he immediately found the right direction and sent a telepathic message, informing them that Yu Qianqiu had arrived. As soon as Yu Qianqiu arrived, the people in charge of the 8 entrances had already been informed of his arrival. After exiting the cave, Yu Qianqiu once again saw the bustling cornucopia. He only took a casual glance and immediately saw a figure appear in front of him. It was Sikongju. When the people below saw Sikongju's appearance, they couldn't help but stop to watch. This was the first time Sikongju saw Yu Qianqiu. He sized him up and asked indifferently, "You're Yu Qianqiu?" He didn't have a good impression of Yu Qianqiu. Shaming his disciple, Guan Zhongkai, was the same as slapping his face. He's Yu Qianqiu. The people below were in an uproar. Yu Qianqiu is here. Yu Qianqiu secretly found it funny. This guy was still calling me a senior earlier, but now he's acting like an expert. He frowned and said, report your name. I don't casually talk to strangers. Sikong-ju's eyes flashed as he stared at Yu Qianqiu and said in a deep voice, World Commerce Association, Sikong-ju. Oh. I've heard of your name for a long time. I am indeed Yu Qianqiu. Yu Qianqiu cupped his hands and asked curiously, do you have any business with me? Senior Niu asked me to find you. I believe you should know what's going on. Sikong-ju said. If it wasn't for the other party carrying something important, why would he be so patient with Yu Qianqiu? Oh. I understand. Yu Qianqiu looked around and said in astonishment, are we going to talk here? Sikong-ju pointed at the god of wealth peak and said, follow me. Yu Qianqiu nodded and the two of them flew towards the god of wealth peak. Wow! That butcher actually dared to come to Cornucopia. Someone exclaimed and the crowd immediately became lively. The news of Yu Qianqiu's arrival quickly spread. On the god of wealth peak, Yin Baikong smiled as he looked at Yu Qianqiu who was looking around and said, I am Yin Baikong, you are the rising star of the cultivation world, Yu Qianqiu. Ha! You are indeed a talent, not bad, not bad. Ah! You are one of the top 10 experts of the cultivation world, Senior Yin. Yu Qianqiu steadied his head and asked in disbelief. Ha! It's just an empty title, not worth mentioning. Yin Baikong appeared to be amiable. Greetings, Senior Yin. Yu Qianqiu bowed and stood up. He suddenly said to Sikong-ju, you should also learn more from your master. In terms of cultivation, your master is much higher than you. But look at Senior Yin, he speaks so politely. Unlike you, you act like you want to kill the moment you see him. Sikong-ju was stunned by his words. Then, his face twitched and his eyes glared at Yin Baikong. This guy was telling on him. Before they left the mountain, Yin Baikong had specially told him to be polite to Yu Qianqiu. As expected, Yin Baikong's face slightly sank and asked indifferently, Sikong-ju, what did you do to Yu Qianqiu? Just what is going on? Even if Sikong-ju killed Yu Qianqiu, Yin Baikong wouldn't feel bad about it. But not listening to him was something to think about. Master, I didn't do anything to him. Sikong-ju forcefully suppressed his anger. Yu Qianqiu waved his hand and said, Senior Yin, don't misunderstand. He really didn't do anything to me. It's just that the way he spoke made me feel uncomfortable. He then bowed and said, I have also seen Senior Yin. Junior doesn't dare to disturb Senior anymore. I will take my leave now. He turned and left. Leaving just like that. Yin Baikong was startled. Originally, he wanted to scold Sikong-ju for putting on an act for Yu Qianqiu, but it seemed like there was no need to do so now. He immediately called out, Yu Qianqiu, please wait. Yu Qianqiu turned around and said, Senior, do you have any other instructions? Yin Baikong's heart skipped a beat. Could it be that Niu You'd never contacted him? Suppressing the anxiety in his heart, he smiled and asked, Yu Qianqiu, did Brother Niu You'd not tell you anything? Oh. I almost forgot, my memory isn't that good. Yu Qianqiu slapped his forehead and said, Senior is asking about the 7 treasure Dan, right? Yin Baikong's heart that was in his throat finally calmed down. He breathed a sigh of relief and said with a smile, It's all right, it's good that you remembered. Let's settle this matter first. With a wave of his hand, 10 bulging storage pouches landed on the bluestone platform at the side. Yu Qianqiu glanced at the 10 storage pouches and scratched his head. Senior, can I discuss something with you? Yin Baikong smiled and said, What's the matter? It's like this. Yu Qianqiu said embarrassedly, Senior's World Commerce Chamber of Commerce is rich and powerful. A mere 7 treasure Dan definitely won't be able to enter your eyes. And this junior also wants to do some small business in cornucopia. Why don't you let this junior sell this 7 treasures pill myself, how about it? Ian Bai Kong was speechless. 5,007 treasure Dan was still a small business. Kid, aren't you afraid of being stuffed to death? He tried his best to squeeze out a smile on his face and said, Young man, this is not right of you. You must keep your promise. You must do what you promised, you must not have any improper thoughts. Ha! Yu Qianqiu laughed and said, I'm just casually saying it. If you don't want to, then forget it. Ian Baikong took out a storage pouch reluctantly and took out a pill. Immediately, he saw a 7-colored pill halo lingering between his fingers. It was exactly the same as the 7 treasure Dan he had seen before. Even Ian Baikong couldn't fake this kind of top-quality pill halo, so it was naturally the real deal. Ian Baikong injected his divine sense into the storage pouch and frowned. He stared at Yu Qianqiu and asked, How many 7 treasure Dan did Niu Yud give you? Yu Qianqiu said with a guilty expression, They should all be in the storage pouch. This kid is trying to play tricks. Ian Baikong's face sank and said, That can't be right. There are only 4,000 here. Brother Niu clearly told me that he gave you 5,000, where did the other 1,000 go? Sikong Ju stared at him coldly, ready to seize the opportunity to flip out. Oh! I almost forgot, my memory isn't that good. Yu Qianqiu took out another storage pouch from his chest and said with an awkward smile, I was afraid that it wouldn't be safe to put all the pills in one storage pouch, so I took 1,000 and put them elsewhere. Finished speaking, he reluctantly handed the storage pouch over to Ian Baikong. Ian Baikong took the storage pouch and checked it. The remaining 1,000 pills were indeed in the pouch. He then revealed a satisfied smile and put them all away. He pointed at the 10 storage pouches on the bluestone platform and said, Those are the 10 billion high-grade spirit stones I promised Brother Niu. Go and count them. We're done with the goods. Yu Qianqiu walked over and sat on the bluestone platform. He counted the pouches one by one and muttered, No matter how much money there is, it's not mine. I have to give it all to Senior Niu. After confirming the amount, he put away the storage pouch and said to Ian Baikong, Senior, next time, you can ask Senior Niu to give you the 7 treasure pills directly. It will save both you and me trouble. There's no point in letting it pass through my hands. Ian Baikong smiled slightly. He could see that this kid was making so many problems because he wasn't satisfied that he didn't get any benefits in the process. However, what he said was exactly what he wanted. If the 7 treasure pills passed through this kid's hands, he wouldn't be at ease. It would be better to trade with Niu Yud. He nodded and said, N. Since you said it like that, then it's settled. I'll talk to Brother Niu about this. He then turned to Sikong Ju and said, Sikong, send Yu Qianqiu down the mountain. Remember to give him 100,000 high-grade spirit stones. Don't let him work hard for nothing. Sikong Ju accepted the order and brought Yu Qianqiu down the mountain. At the foot of the mountain, he really gave him 100,000 high-grade spirit stones. After that, he didn't care about him anymore and left in a flash. This matter already had nothing to do with him. Only a ghost would care about him. Of course, it was also because of Niu Yud that he didn't beat him up. Yu Qianqiu weighed the storage pouch in his hand and chuckled. It was worth it to waste 100,000 high-grade spirit stones. He put it away and walked towards the bustling street. Chapter 627. At the exit to the street, other than a few World Chamber of Commerce disciples standing guard, there were also 4 people looking around. Normally, outsiders were not allowed to stay on this road to God of Wealth Peak. However, these 4 people were Niu Yud's subordinates and enjoyed privileges that outsiders did not have. Yu Qianqiu walked to the back of the 4 and stopped. The four of them also turned to look at him. They were all a little confused. This person didn't look like a disciple of the World Chamber of Commerce, so why did he come down from God of Wealth Peak? Yu Qianqiu smiled at the four people. I am Yu Qianqiu. Senior Niu must have already told you. The four people looked at each other and no longer had any doubts. The person who knew the content of their conversation with Niu Yud was naturally Yu Qianqiu. So they bowed together and said, Greetings, Mr. Yu. Then Tianyi cupped his fists and said, Senior Niu told us to wait here for Mr. and to listen to Mr.'s orders. I know. Senior Niu has told me. The four of you, follow me. Yu Qianqiu instructed and walked into the street. The four people followed behind. The World Chamber of Commerce disciples guarding the road exchanged glances. One of them immediately rushed up the mountain to report. Walking along the street, one could hear people discussing Yu Qianqiu's arrival. However, there were not many people who knew Yu Qianqiu. They did not know that Yu Qianqiu was walking among them. Yu Qianqiu felt comfortable all over. He was not as conspicuous as Niu Yud. Without everyone's attention, he felt much more at ease. However, because of Tian Yi and the other three people, there were still many people pointing at him, who was walking in front of them. Tian Yi, where do you think we should stay? Yu Qianqiu asked casually. Tian Yi immediately followed and replied, There is a residence on God of Wealth Peak that Senior Niu wants. The environment is not bad. If Mr. is willing, you can stay with us there. That place. Yu Qianqiu thought for a moment and shook his head. Don't stay there from today onwards. We will go to a safer place to stay. Yes. Tian Yi replied. However, the four people exchanged glances. They were all confused. They did not know where cornucopia could be safer than God of Wealth Peak. Ah! Isn't that Yu Qianqiu? Someone suddenly shouted from the moving crowd. Everyone's gazes followed and stared. So he's Yu Qianqiu. The stream of people came to a standstill, and discussions immediately broke out. This was bad. They were immediately caught in a traffic jam. The group of five had become a rare animal. Everyone wanted to see what Yu Qianqiu looked like. The path ahead was also blocked. Yu Qianqiu did not say anything else. His body emitted an azure flame that wrapped around him, and he walked forward with the flame in his hand. It was a very frightening sight. The scorching heat wave cleared the way forward, scaring the onlookers into squeezing in all directions, immediately clearing the way forward. Both sides of the street were instantly filled with curses. Yu Qianqiu couldn't be bothered to care about them. In any case, there weren't many good people here, and they deserved to be burned to death. He put away the green flames and continued on his own path, letting the others curse him. If someone scolded him too impudently, he didn't mind killing one or two. Who asked him to have Wen Lanfeng supporting him now? It would be a waste not to use such a big name. Amano and the other three looked at each other. The name of the butcher of the cultivation world was indeed well-deserved. Following Yu Qianqiu, they crossed a few streets and stopped in front of a shop. When the four of them saw the emblem of a dark green orchid, they suddenly realized. That's right. Didn't Wen Lanfeng come to Cornucopia? Living in the Wen family's shop was definitely safer than living on the God of Wealth Peak. The shop assistant welcomed the five people who came in with a smile and said, You. Noticing that a group of people were looking here and pointing, he was a little puzzled, so he couldn't help but change his words. Are the five of you here to sell something? Yu Qianqiu glanced at the shop and found that the Wen family's shop was simply a grocery store, with all kinds of things. It seemed that the Wen family didn't have any specialty, and it was difficult to make a lot of money without something special. It was probably just a contact point. He shook his head and said to the assistant, I'm Yu Qianqiu, and I'm here to visit Senior Wen. Yu Qianqiu. The assistant looked outside and immediately understood. The shopkeeper of the shop came a few steps and asked, "Are you Yu Qianqiu?" "I'm the real deal." Yu Qianqiu smiled. The shopkeeper looked serious and waved his hand, saying, "Come with me." Then he took them to the backyard and asked them to wait for a while. He ran upstairs to report. After a while, a head popped out of a window upstairs, with a sullen face, and shouted to the people below, "Get up here." It was none other than Nongzhu. "Have you taken the wrong medicine?" Yu Qianqiu immediately retorted. He turned back to the four people and said, "You wait here, I'll go and see what's going on." The four people agreed, but they were secretly amazed. They all saw the man just now. It was Mr. Nongzhu who looked for Niu Yud last time. Yu Qianqiu dared to contradict him like this. He was very powerful. Lu Yanqing heard Yu Qianqiu's words upstairs and suddenly laughed. She asked Nongzhu, "Is it Yu Qianqiu?" Nongzhu nodded with a sullen face. Wen Lanfeng couldn't help laughing. He rubbed his hands excitedly and said, "I've heard of this guy for a long time. I'd like to see what's different about him today." The three people all stared at the door. Unexpectedly, they heard dong-dong footsteps everywhere on the floor below. Then they heard someone scolding below, "Damn it, we went to the wrong floor. The fourth floor is the top floor. This is the third floor." The three people looked at each other. Lu Yanqing's face was blocked by the green gauze. They couldn't see any change, but they could hear unbearable laughter coming from inside. Wen Lanfeng just laughed twice, and Nongzhu's face couldn't be gloomy anymore. She scolded with a somewhat twisted face, "Bastard, what a shame." Dong dong dong, footsteps sounded outside. A head popped in and muttered while observing, "Why does a shabby shop have so many rooms? It's like a maze. Don't you think?" When he turned his head to the left, he found Nongzhu and the other two people standing inside. He swallowed his words and asked weakly, "Can I come in?" Wen Lanfeng smiled and said, "Come in." He stared at him curiously. He wanted to see what was so special about this disciple who could attract Bai Chongqun's attention. Yu Qianqiu's face became serious. He walked to Wen Lanfeng and saluted, "You must be the famous senior Wen. No need to be so polite." Wen Lanfeng laughed and said, "You are also famous." "Alas! That's just a false reputation, not worth mentioning." Yu Qianqiu behaved very modestly. When he saw Lu Yanqing, whose face was covered by the green gauze, he pretended not to know her. He asked knowingly, "May I know who this female senior is?" But she and Senior Wen are a perfect match. They are a perfect match. Is she Mrs. Wen? Nongzhu's expression twitched. This guy really knew how to flatter. Wen Lanfeng was probably flattered. Tilting his head to look, Wen Lanfeng was indeed staring at Yu Qianqiu with admiration. It wasn't just ordinary admiration, it was simply admiration. But Lu Yanqing did not accept his feelings. She asked with deep meaning, "You haven't even seen my face. How do you know we are a perfect match? Have you seen me somewhere?" Her voice was like the sound of a clear spring in a deep valley, like the song of an oriole. Damn! Even her voice was so beautiful. No wonder she was the most beautiful woman in the world. Yu Qianqiu was stunned. Then he waved his hand and said, "No, no. It's the first time for me to see Senior Wen, let alone Mrs. Wen. But your temperament is like a dragon and a phoenix, with the charm of a zither and a harp. People with discerning eyes can tell you are husband and wife at first sight." Nongzhu stared at the beam and rolled her eyes when she heard Madame Wen. Wen Lanfeng kept looking at Lu Yanqing and then at himself. It seemed that he really found the beauty of a dragon and a phoenix, and the charm of a harp and a harp. "Well, don't talk nonsense anymore." Lu Yanqing said unhappily, "I'm not Mrs. Wen. I'm Lu Yanqing of Lingfang Valley. The eyes behind the green veil stared at Yu Qianqiu, sizing him up. She couldn't understand. Everyone said that he was refined, but how did he end up being such a bootlicker? Was this really the talented Yu Qianqiu? If Nongzhu was not present, she would even suspect that this person was an impostor of Yu Qianqiu. Ah! Yu Qianqiu had a look of astonishment as he said, "So, it's the world-renowned miracle hands of rejuvenation, divine physician Senior Lu. Sorry for the disrespect." Then he bowed to Wen Lanfeng and said, "Senior Wen, please forgive me for not knowing. I was too reckless just now. Please don't take it to heart." Lu Yanqing was completely speechless. She thought it was not a coincidence that this guy could be in a brothel. Wen Lanfeng said with a warm face, "Those who don't know are not guilty. You can't be blamed for not knowing." Yu Qianqiu immediately took advantage of the situation and said, "Since you have forgiven me, I have a request. I hope you can agree." Nongzhu glanced at him coldly and thought, "Here it comes. Here it comes. I knew this guy would never be ingratiating for no reason. He must be hiding something." Wen Lanfeng's first impression of Yu Qianqiu was very good. It was rare to see such an attractive junior after so many years. No wonder he could enter by Changchun's eyes. There must be a reason. She immediately nodded and said, "What's the matter?" "As long as I can do it. Here's the thing." Yu Qianqiu explained with a bitter smile, "Senior Wen, you know that I have offended a lot of people in the cultivation world. Now that I have come to Cornucopia, I really can't find a safe place to stay. I wonder if I can stay in your Wen family's shop. I see that you have a lot of empty rooms here." Nongzhu was suspicious. This guy had found a free bodyguard. He pretended to be Niu Yud and was like a fish in water in Cornucopia. Who dared to provoke him? Now he suddenly restored his true appearance. Was something going to happen in Cornucopia? Thinking of this, he immediately thought of Zi and Furong who were still on the God of Wealth Peak. He immediately decided to bring them here as soon as possible. It was right to follow this cunning guy. He did not know that Lu Yanqing was also suspicious. That's it. Wen Lanfeng was surprised and felt that the request was too simple. "It's not just me. There are also 4 of my attendants down there. Can they all stay together?" Yu Qianqiu asked. Wen Lanfeng laughed and said, "This is nothing. You can all live in." Chapter 628. Haha, thank you, Senior. Yu Qianqiu showed a sincere smile, but when he looked at Wen Lanfeng and Lu Yanqing, he shook his head slightly, showing a look of regret, and muttered, "What a pity, what a pity." No one knew what he was talking about, but everyone understood what he meant. Wen Lanfeng was very emotional, he admired Bai Changchun from the bottom of his heart. How could he find such an outstanding disciple? Why didn't my Wen family have such an outstanding disciple? Otherwise, I would have taught him a good lesson. Lu Yanqing, who was in the green gauze, bit her teeth lightly. Logically speaking, she should not be too calculative with this junior, but for some inexplicable reason, she felt her teeth itch. "Don't play tricks here." Nongzhu sneered at Yu Qianqiu, and then said to Wen Lanfeng, "Wen Lanfeng, the 2 girls I brought are living with Yin Bai Kong. I'm a little worried, I'd better bring them here." "All right." Wen Lanfeng nodded. Yu Qianqiu was slightly stunned, and asked suspiciously, "You brought 2 girls here? Who?" Nongzhu rolled her eyes and snorted, "Who cares who they are not as important as your spring slumber loft." After that, she teleported. Yu Qianqiu was speechless. It seemed that Nongzhu already knew about his relationship with Yan Yu. Thinking of Furong of Shuntian Island, and Wu Lixue of the Wu family, he couldn't help but reflect. Later, he sighed sadly, seeing that he couldn't do anything about the previous one. Liu Yanqing knew his background, and her eyes were hiding behind the green veil to observe. When Lanfeng didn't understand what Nongzhu meant, and asked in surprise, Yu Qianqiu, what's your relationship with the spring slumber loft? Yu Qianqiu came back to his senses, and said with a bitter smile, something that shouldn't have happened, anyway, it's all my fault. He casually said. When Lanfeng saw that he didn't want to talk about it, so she didn't ask anymore. After the news of Yu Qianqiu's arrival in the cornucopia spread, all the forces were ready to make a move. To the various demigod realm lords, Yu Qianqiu's current cultivation was nothing to them. What moved them was the treasure left behind by the demon lord of 10,000 swords. Hence, they all sent people to keep an eye on him. This brat had been hiding for so long. Since he had appeared, they couldn't let him go. Although he had Wen Lanfeng's support, Wen Lanfeng couldn't always protect him, right? As long as they left the cornucopia, there would be times when they would be alone. At that time, he would personally make a move and capture Yu Qianqiu would be a piece of cake, and no one would know about it. As long as Wen Lanfeng did not know who captured Yu Qianqiu, he could not support Yu Qianqiu even if he wanted to. Around the Wen family's shop, the number of people secretly watching suddenly increased. After listening to Niu Yud's words, Yin Baikong, who was on the God of Wealth peak, lost interest in the treasure left behind by the demon lord of 10,000 swords. However, after hearing that Amano and the other three were following Yu Qianqiu, he felt that something was wrong, but he couldn't figure out what was wrong. Hence, he also ordered people to closely monitor Yu Qianqiu. In the Di Rong Kingdom's shop, after Bing Qingzi heard about Hu Yuntian's actions in luring the two of them to the sleeping spring loft, his complexion became gloomy and gloomy. Without a doubt, even though he had sworn an oath, it had still aroused the suspicion of others. Since Hu Changshu had already become suspicious, the others certainly wouldn't be any better. It was just that most of them didn't have Hu Changshu's strength, so they didn't dare to openly probe. Being stabbed in the back by one's ally made one's mood very bad. However, Bing Qingzi slightly calmed down and put this matter aside for the time being. Similar things were common in the cultivation world, so it wasn't strange at all. Just like these few times, how could he and Hu Changshu not stab Yin Baikong in the back? The latter was also the two's ally, but when it came to interests, they would still take action. The most important thing was to have the ability to deter others, so that they wouldn't dare to act rashly. After the cornucopia meeting ends, immediately follow me back to the Ice Palace. This is not a place to stay for long. For the first time, Bing Qingzi's words to Yan Zhuixing carried an unquestionable tone. Yan Zhuixing was silent for a while before saying, Master, disciples' cultivation has stagnated, becoming a bottleneck in the cultivation of demonic arts. I can only rely on the blood demon flower to lay the 7-star blood formation to absorb the power of the stars to break through quickly. It's said that the cornucopia meeting is a gathering of treasures, but why haven't I seen anyone selling the 7-star blood orchid until now? Bing Qingzi and Man who could hear the unwillingness in his words. Sigh. This kind of thing can be encountered, but not all the time. Bing Qingzi sighed slightly and said, It turns out that the true cultivation meaning of the demonic book has always been sealed by the taboo. Those who don't cultivate the demonic book can't discover and break it. Otherwise, the demonic book will self-destruct. Even I didn't know about this. If I had known that the 7-star blood orchid was the blood demon flower, I would have started collecting it long ago, and I wouldn't be in such a passive situation. At least 7 blood orchids are needed to lay the formation. It's a bit difficult to collect them all at once. Man who bowed and said, Master, you can't be blamed for this. I think the demonic king who wrote the demonic book didn't want such a book to fall into the hands of his opponent, so he added the taboo to protect it. Then he said to Yan Zhuixing, Junior brother, this matter can't be rushed. Although the 7-star blood orchid is rare, it's not extinct. There will be a time when it appears, so we might as well wait patiently. Yan Zhuixing nodded slightly, but he said thoughtfully, maybe there are many in the Chinese cultivation world. Oh. Bing Qingzi's eyes lit up, are you sure? There are 4 major clans in the Chinese cultivation world. Among them, the Wu clan runs the largest auction house in China. I participated once and saw someone auctioning the blood orchid with my own eyes. Yan Zhuixing squinted his eyes and said, later on, I heard that the Wu clan auctioned the 7-star blood orchid several times consecutively. This matter is a bit strange. Why is it that only the Wu clan auctioned the blood orchid one after another? Are you suspecting that the Wu clan has the blood orchid? Bing Qingzi asked. That's not necessarily true. Yan Zhuixing shook his head and said with firm eyes, but there's one thing I'm sure of. The Wu clan definitely knows who the seller and buyer are. It's a pity that it's not convenient to go deep into China's hinterland to make a move on the Wu clan. Otherwise, I'll definitely be able to find out something. Alright, there's no need to worry as long as there's a target. Bing Qingzi's eyes flickered and said, the East Holy Land is opening soon. Once Bai Changchun leaves, I can't care so much anymore. I'll make a trip to the Wu clan personally and find the blood orchid, so that your demonic technique can make a breakthrough as soon as possible. Master. Man who wanted to say something but stopped on second thought. A group of spirit-severing stage experts were forced by Bai Changchun to make a deadly oath, so they couldn't go to the Chinese cultivation world easily. But thinking that Master had broken the restriction to save Yan Zhuixing last time, it was meaningless to say anything more. At this moment, a disciple ran over and reported the news of Yu Qianqiu to Cornucopia. After hearing the news, Bing Qingzi and Man whose faces turned gloomy. They had always remembered the death of their second brother on Yu Qianqiu's head. Yu Qianqiu, you finally appeared. It's been a long time since we last met in China. Yan Zhuixing sneered. He still had a long way to go in cultivating the demonic book, but it shouldn't be a problem for him to deal with Yu Qianqiu. In the backyard of the dormant spring building, the Enchantress of 100 Charms stood by the small lotus pond. Her body was wrapped in a red veil and looked very enchanting. After listening to Niu Yud's words, she didn't show her face in public anymore. She just hoped that Niu Yud's words were true and waited quietly for the arrival of Yu Qianqiu. Sister Yi. Yan Yu shouted happily as soon as she entered the courtyard. She quickly walked to the side of the Enchantress of 100 Charms and said, good news, do you want to hear it? The Enchantress of 100 Charms had a trace of doubt between her eyebrows. After thinking for a while, she was shocked and thought of something. For the current her, what else could be good news? She couldn't help but ask excitedly, you mean, he's here? Yan Yu smiled and said, when I first heard the news, I was worried that you would be happy for nothing. So I sent someone to inquire and confirm it. Not long ago, the person I sent saw Yu Qianqiu using the Starflame fire technique on the street with his own eyes. It's really the Yu Qianqiu you've been waiting for. Really? Where is he now? The Enchantress of 100 Charms asked impatiently. Her face was full of excitement that was hard to suppress. She was a dignified palace mistress. She had sneaked into this place from the cultivation world of China. Not to mention that she was unfamiliar with the people and the place, she also had to be on guard everywhere. It could be said that she had suffered a lot and the hardships were indescribable. With great difficulty, she had finally found him. How could she not be excited? Yan Yu looked at her reaction and chuckled. From her reaction, it could be seen that she wasn't looking for Yu Qianqiu just to solve some trouble as she had said. She was afraid that there was something ambiguous going on. To be honest, Yan Yu was now somewhat curious. What kind of person was Yu Qianqiu to be able to make this woman, who always laughed at everything, care so much about him? I heard that he entered the Wen clan's shop and hasn't come out yet. Just as Yan Yu finished speaking, she saw that the Enchantress of 100 Charms was about to soar into the sky. She hurriedly pulled her back and shook her head, saying, "Since he's already here, why are you in such a hurry?" The cornucopia doesn't allow cultivators below the soul formation stage to fly as they please. Otherwise, they will be killed. Don't be too happy until sorrow comes. The Enchantress of 100 Charms paused. She could hear the teasing tone in Yen Yu's words. She then angrily pinched Yen Yu's voluptuous chest and said, "You're making fun of me." However, she still gave up on the thought of flying over and quickly left the lotus pond. Yen Yu flashed and caught up to her. She pulled her back and said, "I want to see what kind of man this Yu Qianqiu is to be able to make Big Sister fall head over heels for him." "You're still talking," the Enchantress of 100 Charms shouted, and the other giggled. The two of them chattered as they left. It was always easier for women who were in the same boat to become friends. Two beautiful women, one more seductive than the other, appeared on the street at the same time. They immediately attracted everyone's attention, and the sound of saliva being swallowed could be heard. The two women ignored them and went straight to the Wen clan's shop. When the shopkeeper of the shop saw the two of them, he was stunned for a moment. He immediately greeted them with cupped hands and a smile. "So it's owner Yen and the top courtesan of Spring Slumber Brothel. Your presence really brings light to my humble shop. May I ask what you two would like to buy from my humble shop?" Shopkeeper Wen is too polite. Yen Yu smiled. They were doing business on the same street, so they knew each other. He then asked, "I heard that Yu Qianqiu is in your shop. Is that true?" Shopkeeper Wen pondered for a moment. He thought that everyone had seen this and there was nothing to hide. He then nodded and said, "That's right, he is here. Could it be that you two are here to look for him?" Chapter 629. Temptress replied, "I'm an old friend of Yu Qianqiu. I heard that he came to Cornucopia, so I came to see him. Please inform him that Yi-kun is looking for him. He naturally knows who I am. If it weren't for Wen Lanfeng, she would have gone in to find him." Shopkeeper Wen's face was solemn. Yu Qianqiu had a close relationship with the Wen family's ancestor. He really didn't see that this seductive sleeping spring house top courtesan was actually a friend of Yu Qianqiu. Could it be that there was some ambiguous relationship between the two? He didn't dare to neglect and immediately cupped his hands and said, "Please wait a moment, I'll go and inform Mr. Yu." "Thank you." Temptress respectfully sent him off. Upstairs, Yu Qianqiu was swinging his arm to fool Wen Lanfeng, causing Lu Yanqing to frown incessantly. Wen Lanfeng seemed to be possessed, and even admired him to the extreme. In his heart, he was full of envy that Bai Changchun had accepted a good disciple. The shopkeeper ran up and saluted them first, and then said to Yu Qianqiu, "Mr. Yu, there is a woman named Yi-kun looking for you downstairs. She said that she is your old friend. Do you want to see her?" Yu Qianqiu was helpless. This was expected. He knew it would be like this. He sighed and said, "Bring her to the backyard first. I'll go down later." After that, he sat on the side in a daze. The shopkeeper took the order and went down. When Lu Yanqing heard Yi-kun, she immediately remembered the charming woman who sang in Sleeping Spring House. Wasn't she called Yi-kun? When Lanfeng saw him in a daze and couldn't help but ask, "Who is Yi-kun? It seems that you don't want to see her." "It's a long story." Yu Qianqiu sighed. He felt a headache whenever he saw the 100 Charms Enchantress. This unclear relationship really made him feel conflicted. The Temptress and Yen Yu were led to the backyard. The shopkeeper informed them that Yu Qianqiu was talking to Wen Lanfeng and would come down shortly. He asked them to wait for a moment. After saying that, the shopkeeper did not disturb them and went to busy himself. Yen Yu saw Amano and the other three sitting in the courtyard, so she went over to greet Li Chuxiang. The Temptress looked around and sighed. Back then, she was a dignified palace master, and Yu Qianqiu was just a small disciple who worked as a laborer in Ongquangsung, and he was almost killed by her. Now, things were really different from before. His name was known to everyone in the cultivation world, and he was even more famous than himself. Moreover, the people who came and went were all top figures in the cultivation world of China. It was really hard to understand. He had been jumping around outside and causing trouble everywhere. It was a miracle that he had survived until now. But unexpectedly, he climbed higher and higher, climbing to a height that many people could not reach. At this moment, 3 figures landed in the backyard at the same time. It was Nongzhu who brought Ze and Hibiscus. As soon as Nongzhu arrived, people in the yard came over and saluted, Senior Nongzhu. Nongzhu waved her hand casually, indicating that there was no need to be so polite, but when she saw Yanyu, her expression was not friendly. Yanyu lowered her head secretly and cursed in her heart. She did not know when she had offended this senior, who always gave her a bad look. Ze accidentally glanced at the temptress and was stunned for a moment. Then she cheered, "Ah! Sister Yi! Why are you here?" Ze. The temptress's eyes also lit up, and the two of them held hands excitedly. Especially Ze, she did not have many friends, and suddenly met one, she was really happy and happy. When Yu Qianqiu, who was upstairs, heard the words, "purple dress," he was startled. He immediately tiptoed to the window, and like a thief, he stuck his head out and looked down. It would have been fine if he didn't look, but when he did, his face turned green. Let alone purple dress, even that girl was fine. In addition to the temptress, there was also Yanyu. What the hell? Furong was also here. What was Nongzhu doing? Why did she bring her here? When Lanfeng and Lu Yanqing looked at each other and found that they could not understand this guy. They looked at his strange behavior. Nongzhu saw that her daughter was so happy, so he forgot about Yanyu and asked with a smile, "Ze, who is this? She made you so happy." "Master, this is Sister Yi-kun. She was my best friend when I was in the cultivation world of Huaxia. She helped me a lot," Ze said excitedly. "Oh." Nongzhu suddenly smiled and nodded to the temptress, "In that case, I have to thank you. My disciple doesn't know what to do. Thank you for taking care of him." He wasn't just saying this casually. Since he had helped Ze before, he would remember this favor. "Senior, you are welcome. I did not do anything," the temptress said respectfully. "Well, Miss Yi, if you need me in the future, you can come to the purple bamboo forest in the South Sea to find me. Maybe I can help you a little." Nongzhu smiled. This could be considered as giving a promise. The temptress was overjoyed and immediately bowed, "Thank you, Senior." "Thank you." She had heard of Mr. Nongzhu's name. She did not expect to accidentally make friends with a middle-stage divine transformation realm master, which made her overjoyed. Nongzhu suddenly said, "Huh?" He stared at the almost transparent clothes of the temptress and asked suspiciously, "You have practiced the jade charm skill? Who is Qiu Meinyang from the cultivation world of Huaxia to you?" The temptress was stunned and immediately replied, "Senior, I have indeed practiced the jade charm skill. Senior Qiu was the wife of the leader of the Caprice Palace more than 1,000 years ago. I found the jade charm skill by accident when I was sorting out the relics of the past. It was left by Senior Qiu. Are you old friends with the ancestors of the Caprice Palace? Time really flies. It has been more than 1,000 years. At that time, my cultivation was only at the middle stage of the crossing calamity stage." Nongzhu sighed with emotion. The charming woman called Qiu Meinyang appeared in her mind. Her cultivation was one level higher than his at that time. They met by chance and did not know each other's background. They did not want to inquire about each other's background. They just fooled around for a period of time because they were attracted to each other. That feeling was really ecstatic. After hanging out with each other for a period of time, they each had their own matters to attend to, and after that, they never saw each other again. Nongju suddenly froze and asked weakly, "What did you just say?" "You said that Chiu Mainyang is the wife of the leader of the Caprice Palace." "Yes." "Senior, don't you know?" the temptress asked. "Chiu Mainyang, good name." Yu Qianchou, who was upstairs, revealed a cheeky grin and asked Wen Lanfeng, who had also walked to the window to watch, "Senior Wen, have you heard about the romantic history of this Chiu Mainyang and Senior Nongju?" Wen Lanfeng replied disapprovingly, "I have never heard of Chiu Mainyang. Nongju's romantic history is well known in the cultivation world. Who knows how many women he has hooked up with? With his cultivation talent, if he spent half of his time on women on cultivation, I am afraid he would have been ranked among the top 10 experts. You are the same, spending all your time on Lu Yanqing." Yu Qianchou secretly smiled, but when he saw the women below, he suddenly stopped smiling. It seemed that he was the same. "Ha! Maybe it has been too long and I have forgotten." Nongju laughed. He was sweating in his heart. The woman he hooked up with was the wife of the leader of the Caprice Palace. At that time, although his cultivation talent was good, he was just a rogue cultivator in the middle stage of crossing calamity. At that time, the Caprice Palace was already a big force, but he dared to make a cuckold of the leader of the Caprice Palace. If he was found out, he would die without a whole body. That was dangerous, too dangerous. Nongju rejoiced and asked subconsciously, "How is she now?" After asking, he immediately realized that he had asked the wrong question. Since Chiu Mainyang said that it was a relic, she was naturally dead. Moreover, if Chiu Mainyang was still alive now, her cultivation must have reached the deification stage. If her cultivation had reached the deification stage, there was no reason that he did not know. Although his question was nonsense, the temptress still answered honestly, "Senior Chiu passed away 1,000 years ago." This sentence made Nongju sigh. Looking back on the past, she could not count how many women she had slept with, but those who were still alive could be counted on one hand. "Chiu Mainyang, have a safe journey." Nongju sighed to the sky. The fate of life was so magical. Chiu Mainyang's cultivation was higher than his, and now he did not know how many times she had reincarnated. But he was still alive after 1,000 years. Maybe this was the meaning of cultivation, to live. The temptress also suspected the relationship between him and Chiu Mainyang, but Chiu Mainyang was the ancestor of the sect after all. She did not dare to think deeply about it. But she was more or less glad. She did not expect that the ancestor of the sect had a relationship with the famous Mr. Nongju. If the sect encountered any trouble, it would be easier for her to ask for help. This was also the benefit of the ancestor. "Furong, Furong, come here." Zi waved to Furong and called her over. She pointed to the temptress and said, "This is Sister Yi, whom I often mention to you. She is also very familiar with Yu Qianchou. You can also call her Sister Yi." "Sister Yi," Furong said obediently. Zi pointed at her and introduced her to the temptress. "This is Furong, Yu Qianchou's woman." Yu Qianchou, who was upstairs, stared at the lively Zi and rolled his eyes. Yu Qianchou's woman. The temptress was startled, then smiled and said, "Hello, Sister Furong." Yan Yu looked around. She looked at the temptress and then at Furong. She kept thinking about which woman looked more like Yu Qianchou's woman. She did not know that she was also one of them. If she knew, how would she feel? "Sister Yi, aren't you in the Chinese cultivation world? Why are you here?" Ze asked curiously. The temptress pointed to the building and said with a smile, I happened to come to the cornucopia. I heard that Yu Qianqiu is here, so I came to see. He is here. Ze and Furong asked almost at the same time. The temptress was surprised and said, You don't know. Ze and Furong looked at Nongzhu at the same time. The former asked suspiciously, Master, is Yu Qianqiu really here? Her tone was a little sad. Nongzhu coughed guiltily and said, How would I know? Ever since he knew that Yu Qianqiu was in the Sleeping Spring building, he was already furious. He did not want the two girls to meet Yu Qianqiu. Why would he tell them that Yu Qianqiu was here? If he was not worried that something might happen, he would not have brought the two girls here. You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.